That is something that also stands as a challenge for Iran, whether or not it has the capability to sustain a fight when it comes to such sophisticated interception as well. So these are some of the visuals that we're bringing for you on that right now.
Let's talk about strikes that are being carried out in western Tehran. Plumes of smoke that can be seen rising. Tehran, remember, has been at the heart of this military exchange, at the heart of the conflict. A lot of such visuals that have come in from Tehran. This is a loud explosion that you see. The thick plumes of smoke clearly establishing that the magnitude of the explosion is for everyone to see, just solely going by these visuals. These are visuals from Tehran, one of the places that were targeted on day one by the US-Israeli strikes. So Tehran, of course, continues to see some of these worrying visuals still.
And moving on to then visuals released by the US CENTCOM as well. US forces have cleared Iranian ships from the Gulf of Oman. Remember, we also heard in the statements earlier, the point here is to completely destroy the naval fleet, there needs to be no nukes. That's their stated goal at this time. And to that tune, the US forces have cleared the Iranian ships from the Gulf of Oman. This is an admission by the US CENTCOM. They say that the asset here is maritime freedom, and that's their goal in the Gulf of Oman as well. So these are some of the visuals of that as well.
So that's one big objective which has been highlighted by President Donald Trump in his latest statement as well, that we're going to destroy Iran's naval power. We're also going to ensure that Iran is not able to fulfill its nuclear ambition. The other thing which is being spoken of very clearly by President Donald Trump is of course how this is a terror-backing nation, and we're not going to allow Iran to sponsor some of these terror outfits. And they've gone on to speak of some of those proxies. And the other concern is that this could also lead to a direct conflict between the Israeli forces and, let's say, Hezbollah in Lebanon, and foot soldiers eventually participating in the conflict. So could it reach that point? How soon? What really does this conflict have in store? Several reactions have come in from experts who've been breaking down what they think of the story ahead. Listen in.
Determined to act with or without the U.S., our Commander-in-Chief and the administration and the officials I just named had a very difficult decision to make. They had to evaluate the threats to the U.S., to our troops, to our installations, to our assets in the region and beyond. And they determined, because of the exquisite intelligence that we had, that if Israel fired upon Iran and took action against Iran to take out the missiles, then they would have immediately retaliated against U.S. personnel and assets. The consequences of inaction on our part could have been devastating. Pray for our troops and all those in harm's way, our allies as well. Iran was a great threat to everybody in the region and everybody in the world.
They're suffering a tremendous amount of damage. Honestly, again, I'm not going to give away the details of our tactical efforts, but the hardest hits are yet to come from the U.S. military. The next phase will be even more punishing on Iran than it is right now. Someone was screaming, how long will it take? I don't know how long it'll take. We have objectives. We will do this as long as it takes to achieve those objectives, and we will achieve those objectives. The world will be a safer place when we're done with this operation.
Matthew, when we hear that and see that, you see these numbers of dead and injured, a tense situation, escalation, majorly so in strikes, and what are you seeing on the ground?
Yeah, it does very much, Erin, feel like this is a second front that's opened up in the Iran war, because Hezbollah has always been such a reliable, such a powerful proxy of the Iranian regime. And it's because of its salvo of missile strikes and drone attacks across the border into northern Israel a couple of days ago that these Israeli strikes on Lebanon and on Hezbollah positions have really started to intensify. It is incredibly tense here in Beirut tonight. We've been talking about those airstrikes, we've been hearing them. You've seen those images of them. There are drones almost constantly in the skies above us. 52 people dead, nearly more than 150 or so that have been injured. But more than that, thousands of people have been forced to flee their homes, particularly in southern Lebanon, closer to the border with Israel where you are, and which are strongholds of Hezbollah. That's come under intensive Israeli attack, and people have got in their cars and they've come up to Beirut where it's at least a little bit safer to try and get out of the firing line. There's been a strong reaction from the Lebanese government. They've criticised Hezbollah's actions for drawing Lebanon into this Iran war by striking in revenge for the killing of the Iranian supreme leader over the weekend. They've actually taken the step of formally banning the military activities of Hezbollah. Now, it sounds symbolic, but it could create tensions. It's certainly a risky strategy when it comes to the internal dynamics of Lebanon, but they've done that anyway in a desperate bid to kind of prevent further Israeli airstrikes to keep it out of this conflict. But for the moment, Erin, it does seem that slowly Lebanon, through its proxy, Iranian proxy Hezbollah, is being drawn more and more into that Iran conflict.
Nick, as we're just hearing this happen, is there anything you guys could hear or see? What are you learning?
Yeah, we heard about this first reported on social media here about an hour or so ago. We went out to the US Embassy. We've just been there. It's in a massive diplomatic compound area in Riyadh. There are normally police checkpoints to get in there. We got through the first checkpoint. We couldn't get through the second checkpoint. I have not seen police activity around those checkpoints in the diplomatic compound like this since I was there when there was a terrorist bombing in that area about 20 odd years ago. So very clear something has happened. The police on high alert there. We don't have more details other than it appears these two suspected Iranian drones have hit the US Embassy here in Riyadh. Of course, this comes on the heels tonight of the State Department warning citizens in 14 different countries, including Saudi Arabia, to leave the region. What we do know about this incident tonight is there was social media video posted that appeared, and we're still running this information down, appeared to show a fire outside of the US Embassy here. Striking in Riyadh, there have been attempts by Iran over the past couple of days to try to hit this city. Not quite clear what the targets were then. Those attempts have failed because they've been intercepted. But the two drones are reported to have been involved, suspected Iranian drones. Fits a pattern we're seeing in Saudi Arabia. Today, the biggest oil facility here in Saudi Arabia, Ras Tanura, was hit by shrapnel falling from the intercept of two drones. This seems to be a tactic. It's an effort to make sure that the Iranians are able to defeat the defense systems, and that appears to be what has happened tonight. It is a big deal in this city. It will be of concern for Saudi authorities that drones were able to get through, penetrate a key ally and get to a key ally's embassy. So this is a worry here in this city.
Who, what, where, when, why. You see the bits, I see the whole. To know the inside story on Iran, get with me inside the bunker. Only on CNN News 18.
Okay, more breaking news coming in. The US has released a video showing an Iranian ship in the Gulf of Oman being destroyed. US forces could be seen clearing Iranian ships from Gulf of Oman and have also released this video showing an Iranian ship in the Gulf of Oman being destroyed. So that's the kind of escalation that we're looking at in the Gulf of Oman. Iranian ship that's been destroyed and US forces sharing that one footage as video proof that you see on your screens as well. Now, it makes one thing amply clear that the United States, especially given what President Donald Trump has said in the last address of his, wherein he said, expect this war to continue for the next 4 to 5 weeks, This clearly means that the United States is also going to be upping the ante militarily. That's what's expected on US's part going forward as well. And Iran, remember, is also not willing to back down. In fact, much of the Middle East has been drawn into this war, and rather forcefully has been drawn into this war, isn't it, Haim? It's interesting how the US has made it amply clear there's no question of giving up as yet. Now, the focus is whether or not we'll see similar strikes of the same magnitude being carried out to ensure that the ones who are now replacing the eliminated leadership are also done away with. That's the big focus story. At least a lot of analysts at the moment are weighing in on this. Speaking of these ships, let's not forget the story in the Strait of Hormuz. That one passage is responsible for 1/5 of global oil supply, and Iran has formally closed it. So that's another case of concern.
Now, of course, when we take a look at the Strait of Hormuz as well, let's just not forget that the US CENTCOM is definitely upping the rhetoric here by saying, of course, that about 2 days ago, there were about 11 naval ships in the Gulf of Oman. These are the visuals that they've shared. These are the visuals by the US CENTCOM. So they are, of course, upping the rhetoric here. When we talk about the diplomatic solution to this, we know that Iranian leadership right now is also saying that they are not ready to get on the negotiating table. Trump there saying that that perhaps is their only option. How long can the Iranian regime, whatever is left of it, sustain this fight? That's something that remains to be seen as well. And Kritsveen, in fact, those are some of the conversations that we've been having with experts as well as to what the other options are on the table. And many would contend there that continuing this fight is just not going to be sustainable for at least the Iranian regime.
Yeah, not sustainable for Iranian regime is one. For the rest of the Middle East that's been forcefully drawn into this war, for how long are they going to... Welcome back. We return with yet another footage from the US Central Command that you see on your screens. This depicts what the US operations in Iran look like, a little bit of a reflection of the same in these visuals. The Secretary of War, remember, had also stated that US forces are hitting Iran surgically and overwhelmingly. So Operation Epic Fury, laser focused on destroying Iranian offensive missiles, and this is indicative of that. Visuals have been released by the US CENTCOM. You do see some of these precision strikes that have been carried out. Now, whether this was day one remains to be seen still. We're going to try and understand, get a sense of what these visuals indicate when Siddhant is through. He's going to be joining us in just a bit. But these are visuals that officially have been shared by the United States, released by US CENTCOM. Siddhant Mishra with us on the broadcast. Siddhant, what do we see here? Are these from day one? Because a lot of experts have weighed in on how the US offensive at least is dialed down from the first day. We've seen Israel carry out intense strikes on Iran. But as for direct engagement or involvement of the United States, there's been a little bit of a dial down, isn't it? What do we see here exactly?
Well, that's right. So, in fact, U.S. leadership, U.S. officials have been saying this since yesterday. In fact, yesterday there was a press briefing by Pete Hegseth, and in fact, this morning we heard from Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Both of them said that there's going to be a very hard response to Iran. Operation Fury, Epic Fury continues, and there's going to be more strikes that U.S. forces will conduct in Iran. And now we're getting this video, which has been released by U.S. Central Command, Kritsveen, and the message is that U.S. forces are hitting Iran surgically, overwhelmingly, and unapologetically. Operation Epic Fury is laser focused on destroying Iranian offensive missiles. So, as I said, that the next goal, perhaps what we could understand after hearing U.S. leadership, is to end this stockpile, the missile stockpile of Iran, because despite the best of the air defense systems which have been put in place by U.S., Israel, and the combined forces in the West Asia, Patriot and the other missile defense system, the Shahed missiles and the other missiles are managing to penetrate into the skies and have successfully managed to hit some of the U.S. bases, and now a fresh strike on the U.S. diplomatic mission in Riyadh. So the idea is now in this war to go after the stockpile, to hit the areas where Iran is launching these missiles in West Asia. So that is the message which U.S. is sending out right now.
If we could just perhaps go back to Operation Midnight Hammer that we saw last year, the 12-day war, where the United States had firmly confirmed or claimed rather that they had destroyed 3 of the nuclear facilities in Iran as part of Operation Midnight Hammer using the bunker buster bombs, Siddhant, if you remember. That being said, once again, it's the nuclear facilities back on target. But if we were to go by the reports that came eventually following Operation Midnight Hammer, there were some discrepancies there when it comes to Donald Trump's statements and what actually happened on ground. This time around, what do you think are going to be the learnings, and how do you think this offensive would be different?
Well, that's right. That's absolutely right. So, look, there are 2 goals, which perhaps there were 3 goals which U.S. wanted to achieve. One was to take down the regime. So, partially it has been achieved by taking down Ali Khamenei and the other senior officials. But still, there is no regime change taking place in Iran anytime soon. Point number 1. Point number 2 is that as far as the nuclear enrichment program is concerned, the 3 of the sites were hit last year, as you rightly said. Isfahan, Natanz, and Fordo, where the nuclear enrichment program is underway. Now, there was no evidence, perhaps, which U.S. could produce at that point in time to suggest that these strikes have put an end to the nuclear program of Iran, because there were multiple contradictory reports suggesting that the nuclear enrichment program and the facility was moved out ahead of these strikes, etc., etc. In fact, IAEA at that point in time also said that there were no signs of radiation after the U.S. strike. So nothing substantial could be achieved at that point in time, going by the reports. Now, the third major objective in this war is to end the missile stockpile. In fact, when the meeting also took place in Geneva, twice both sides met in Geneva, and when Oman was mediating. So nuclear program was the one goal, perhaps agreeing Iran to end the nuclear program. But the most important one was to put an end to the missile program, because that is perhaps a bigger
and
threat,
President Donald Trump, when he spoke at the White House on Monday, Siddhant, made it amply clear that first we're going to be destroying Iran's missile capabilities, and this visual possibly indicative of that. But that's not the only support that the United States is providing to Israel. Also, remember, it's deeply involved in providing not just military firepower, but also intelligence, also actively shaping up the campaign message. All of that is being put together by the United States, and that's a story that's being shared by US CENTCOM, if we just go by these visuals very closely. Siddhant, many thanks for joining us with all those details. We need to cut across live to CNN International.
In Dhahran, of course, that's much closer to Iran. And then subsequent to that shelter in place, there were reports that there have been additional drone impacts at the embassy here in Riyadh. We are unable to confirm those with local officials here at the moment. We're trying to run that information down. But it is, and I've been speaking with officials here, it is a point of concern that these drones have been able to get through to the U.S. embassy here. Look, the United States embassy in Riyadh and other associated potential Iranian targets in Saudi Arabia are very high value, considered higher value, if you will, than those, let's say, in Bahrain or Abu Dhabi, because those are easier to hit. And also that Saudi Arabia is a much bigger, more powerful kingdom, and therefore striking Saudi Arabia carries with it more messaging, more weight. So this is a very key moment. A long night is what one official here described to me what to expect.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Nick Robertson, keep us updated what you're hearing from officials there on the ground as they're still trying to figure out clearly the aftermath of this. And Matthew Chance, we've also seen major explosions happening in Beirut tonight. What's the latest where you are?
Yeah, there was a big set of explosions a couple of hours ago in the south of the city, which is a sort of Hezbollah stronghold. There have been intensive attacks throughout the course of the past couple of days. And in fact, within the past few moments, there's been another Israeli warning which they sort of transmit over social media, that there will be more attacks in the course of the evening, again in that southern part of Beirut, the Lebanese capital, which is known to be a Hezbollah stronghold. It looks like, it feels like in Lebanon that this country is reluctantly, increasingly becoming another front in the US and Israeli war in Iran. That's because Lebanon is home to Hezbollah, which was once a very powerful proxy of Tehran. It's an Iranian-backed militia. It had a vast arsenal in the past. That arsenal has been degraded somewhat over several years of very orchestrated and concerted efforts by the Israelis to do exactly that. But it's still a force, and it's still able to carry out attacks. And in fact, over the past couple of days, it did that, following the death and the killing of the Iranian Supreme Leader, Ayatollah Khamenei. Hezbollah launched 6 missiles across the border into Israel, and also what it said was a swarm of drones. They didn't do much damage. They were intercepted, but nevertheless, it was enough for the Israelis to really step up the attacks that they've been carrying out, admittedly, over the past several years anyway, but really stepping them up in southern Lebanon and in the south of Beirut. And that's led to numerous deaths and injuries, more than 50 deaths according to the Lebanese authorities. More importantly, thousands of people fleeing their homes for the relative safety of other parts of the country.
Yeah, we're seeing just how wide this is growing from just Friday night and Saturday morning. Matthew Chance, keep us updated on what you're seeing on the ground. Stay safe to you and Nick. And I should note that attack that we just were reporting on the U.S. Embassy in Riyadh, where Nick is, comes as my colleague Jim Sciutto is reporting via sources tonight that the United States is actually preparing for a major uptick in attacks on Iran in the next 24 hours. A lot of that has to do with the president's plan, but also what we have seen happen since they first struck Iran. We now know and have confirmed at least 6 U.S. service members have been killed. They died in a direct hit on a makeshift operations center at a civilian port in Kuwait. And a source tells us that the strike was so quick, there were no warnings or sirens for those troops to evacuate in time. Obviously, it's devastating news for their families. And as this fighting is going on tonight, the Trump administration, as for why this is happening, has really been all over the map when it comes to the objectives of this mission. And that really starts at the top.
Okay, more breaking news coming in. The US has released a video showing an Iranian ship in the Gulf of Oman being destroyed. US forces could be seen clearing Iranian ships from Gulf of Oman and have also released this video showing an Iranian ship in the Gulf of Oman being destroyed. So that's the kind of escalation that we're looking at in the Gulf of Oman. An Iranian ship that's been destroyed, and US forces sharing that one footage as video proof that you see on your screens as well. Now, it makes one thing amply clear, that the United States, especially given what President Donald Trump has said in the last address of his, wherein he said, expect this war to continue for the next 4 to 5 weeks. This clearly means that the United States is also going to be upping the ante militarily. That's what's expected on US's part going forward as well. And Iran, remember, is also not willing to back down. In fact, much of the Middle East has been drawn into this war, and rather forcefully has been drawn into this war, isn't it, Haim? It's interesting how the US has made it amply clear there's no question of giving up as yet. Now, the focus is whether or not we'll see similar strikes of the same magnitude being carried out to ensure that the ones who are now replacing the eliminated leadership are also done away with. That's the big focus story. At least a lot of analysts at the moment are weighing in on this. Speaking of these ships, let's not forget the story in the Strait of Hormuz. That one passage is responsible for 1/5 of global oil supply, and Iran has formally closed it. So that's another case of concern.
Now, of course, when we take a look at the Strait of Hormuz as well, let's just not forget that the US CENTCOM is definitely upping the rhetoric here by saying, of course, that about 2 days ago, there were about 11 naval ships in the Gulf of Oman. These are the visuals that they rhetoric here. When we talk about the diplomatic solution to this, we know that Iranian leadership right now is also saying that they are not ready to get on the negotiating table. Trump there saying that that perhaps is their only option. How long can the Iranian regime, whatever is left of it, sustain this fight? That's something that remains to be seen as well. And Kritsveen, in fact, those are some of the conversations that we've been having with experts as well as to what the other options are on the table. And many would contend there that continuing this fight is just not going to be sustainable for at least the Iranian regime.
Yeah, not sustainable for Iranian regime is one. For the rest of the Middle East that's been forcefully drawn into this war, for how long are they going to continue to take this? And let's not forget, they may have all these conversations with the United States very, very soon, because there is collateral damage. And we've heard several experts say that some of these nations who have nothing to do with what's happening between Israel, Iran and the United States, their normal life has taken a toll. Remember, flight cancellations, though we've seen partly resumed, there is a lot of inconvenience that this entire region.
Welcome back. Thank you so much for staying with us. Lots of updates coming in as we track all the developments from West Asia and the larger impact that it has. India is ramping up its largest rescue effort in years as the West Asia conflict further intensifies. Several Indians have returned to India while thousands remain stranded. With major airspaces closed, the Ministry of External Affairs is coordinating with missions in Dubai, in Tel Aviv and Tehran to secure safe passage.
Some flights have resumed from some of these countries. Flight operations planned from Jeddah, for instance. Hundreds of Indians still stuck in transit hubs. The government has assured that every citizen will be brought home safely, even as they warned that the volatile situation on the ground remains a significant challenge. Indigo, in the meanwhile, has planned 10 special relief operations from Jeddah to India on the 3rd to facilitate the return of stranded passengers. So today, that development's likely to shape up. Now, this, of course, is subject to required approvals and prevailing airspace conditions. But for those still in the region, 24/7 emergency helplines are active. Speaking of which, there's breaking news also coming in. A statement that's been issued by the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. The INB Ministry has indicated that civil aviation authorities are closely monitoring the evolving airspace situation across parts of the Middle East. Officials say special arrangements are underway to assist stranded passengers, while airlines are deploying extra capacity and coordinating with foreign authorities to ensure safe movement.
For more on this, we have Anvit live with us. Anvit, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. What can you tell us?
See, coordinated efforts are on, and these Indians are also in touch with the government officials, and efforts are being made to bring them back, those who want to come back. And in this effort, Indigo will be operating 10 special relief operation flights, and from Jeddah to India on March 3rd. And many of these Indians are expected to come on board this flight. In fact, these will be relief flight. However, yesterday a flight from Jeddah came to India, from Abu Dhabi came to India, which was a scheduled flight. Scheduled flights are also now operating, and gradually airports like Jeddah and Abu Dhabi are, in phase manner, they are becoming operational. So which is a good news, and also that, Indigo will be planning, Indigo has planned 10 special relief flights. Yesterday, Ministry of Civil Aviation came out with this statement. So they made the announcement that the relief flights will be operated, and more airlines are also being roped in for the same. At the same time, however, Air India has extended its suspension of flights from the region for March 3rd. and Etihad is also extended till March 4th afternoon. Indigo has also cancelled certain flights, so cancellations are still on because the tension in the region is only escalating. But at the same time, Ministry is keeping a close eye. Ministry of Civil Aviation and Broadcast are keeping a close eye and keeping continuous touch with Indians who are stranded in these regions.
All right, Anvit, thank you so much for that. Let's just listen into some of the reactions before we get you more updates on this.
एयर स्पेस बड़ा बिजी है वहाँ पे, इंटरसेप्ट तो हो रही है बराबर, मिसाइल गिरी कुछ भी नहीं है, जितने भी गिरे हैं वो मलबे ही गिरे हैं, उसी कारण इंजरी हुई है. बाकी यूएस का आई थिंक एयर डिफेंस सिस्टम में तो बड़ा सेफ है वहाँ पे माहौल, बट हाँ वो थोड़े बहुत मलबे गिरने से ज़रूर मर रहे हैं, बट हाँ आप देख सकते हो, फील कर सकते हो वहाँ पे इंटरसेप्ट हो रहे हैं कॉन्स्टेंटली.
It is okay. We could see the missiles and all from our house, and but it was okay. The government was cooperative. They were intercepting everything. There were being alerts sent. So overall, it is a little bit scary, but then we were safe.
The government of India attaches very high importance to the safety, security and well-being of the Indian nationals across the region and in UAE. I would like to tell you that the Indian Embassy in UAE and the Indian Consulate in Dubai, we are working around the clock 24/7 to ensure that we are available to all members of community. We are running helplines 24/7 and emails which are details below in the screen. Please, you can reach out to us through this at any point in time for any concern that you would have. Friends, I would also like to tell you, please do not fall prey to any rumors or unverified information. Always check official handles, embassy social media handles, the official media handles and the handles of the authorities in UAE and different emirates for any information.
Shifting focus to more breaking news coming in, Indigo has cancelled 43 flights to and from Middle East for today. That is the 3rd of March is what we're learning. 43 flights stand cancelled. Do remember, similar story playing out in other airlines as well. Air India had also extended the suspension of its Middle East services amid the ongoing tensions following the Iran-Israel war. But this is an update coming in from Indigo. 43 flights have been cancelled to and from the Middle East for today. So another day's delay for those who are looking at commuting, who are looking at traveling to or from the Middle East to India. And this is an update that's been shared by Indigo as we speak. Remember, there are a lot of passengers stranded in different parts of Middle East. They're looking at returning to either their home countries or looking at countries like India if they're Indians for the interim, given the escalating situation between Iran and Israel and how some of these Middle Eastern countries are caught in the crossfire. I do want to bring in Anvit Srivastav into the conversation. Anvit, what is the flight situation as we speak for all of today? For those watching, how much of an inconvenience still for passengers looking at commuting through this route?
See, the situation, if we talk about flights, has not improved much since last 2 days. Since February 28, the flights have been affected, and on February 28, if we talk about Indian carriers, overall more than 400 flights had to be cancelled. The next day, on March 1st, roughly around 350 flights were cancelled. Government had given this figure, and yesterday also around 300 flights were affected all over India. If we talk about the Middle East region. Other than that, Indigo has also announced that 43 flights will remain cancelled for March 3rd. Yesterday, from Delhi airport alone, 60 departures and 40 arrivals were cancelled. And if we talk about Mumbai, the second most busiest airport in the country, on March 2nd, arrivals were 61 that were cancelled and 55 departures had to be cancelled. So, total 116 air traffic movements were affected yesterday. Today also we are expecting some flights to be affected because the flights mostly to European destinations are affected. The routes have been curtailed. Also flights to US were affected, but they have been rerouted. So there's not much effect, but flights to Europe and Middle East region are the mainly that are affected. So it is expected to continue. However, at the same time, government is also planning relief flights and additional flights.
Absolutely. Anvit, thank you so much for bringing us the latest on this.
That's all we could pack for you in this edition of News. Our non-stop rolling coverage on the West Asia conflict continues on the other side. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be right back. Okay, more breaking news coming in. The US has released a video showing an Iranian ship in the Gulf of Oman being destroyed. US forces could be seen clearing Iranian ships from Gulf of Oman and have also released this video showing an Iranian ship in the Gulf of Oman being destroyed. So that's the kind of escalation that we're looking at in the Gulf of Oman. Iranian ship that's been destroyed and US forces sharing that one footage as video proof that you see on your screens as well. Now it makes one thing amply clear, that the United States, especially given what President Donald Trump has said in the last address of his, wherein he said expect this war to continue for the next 4 to 5 weeks, this clearly means that the United States is also going to be upping the ante militarily. That's what's expected on US's part going forward as well. And Iran, remember, is also not willing to back down. In fact, much of the Middle East has been drawn into this war, and rather forcefully has been drawn into this war, isn't it, Haim? It's interesting how the US has made it amply clear there's no question of giving up as yet. Now, the focus is whether or not we'll see similar strikes of the same magnitude being carried out to ensure that the ones who are now replacing the eliminated leadership are also done away with. That's the big focus story. At least a lot of analysts at the moment are weighing in on this. Speaking of these ships, let's not forget the story in the Strait of Hormuz. That one passage is responsible for 1/5 of global oil supply, and Iran has formally closed it. So that's another case of concern.
Now, of course, when we take a look at the Strait of Hormuz as well, let's just not forget that the US CENTCOM is definitely upping the rhetoric here by saying, of course, that about 2 days ago, there were about 11 naval ships in the Gulf of Oman. These are the visuals that they've shared. These are the visuals by the US CENTCOM. So they are, of course, upping the rhetoric here. When we talk about the diplomatic solution to this, we know that Iranian leadership right now is also saying that they are not ready to get on the negotiating table. Trump there saying that perhaps is their only option. How long can the Iranian regime, whatever is left of it, sustain this fight? That's something that remains to be seen as well. And Kritsveen, in fact, those are some of the conversations that we've been having with experts as well as to what the other options are on the table. And many would contend there that continuing this fight is just not going to be sustainable for at least the Iranian regime.
Yeah, not sustainable for Iranian regime is one. For the rest of the Middle East that's been forcefully drawn into this war, for how long are they going to continue to take this? And let's not forget, they may have all these conversations with the United States. Some of these nations who have nothing to do with what's happening between Israel, Iran and the United States, their normal life has taken a toll. Remember, flight cancellations, though we've seen partly resumed, there is a lot of inconvenience that this entire region is facing, and hence expect these countries also to rig this with the United States. Speaking of how the entire world stands impacted in some way or the other, India is also ramping up its largest rescue effort in years as the West Asia conflict intensifies. Several Indians have returned to India while thousands remain stranded. With major airspaces closed, the Ministry of External Affairs is coordinating with missions in Dubai, Tel Aviv and Tehran to secure safe passage, while some flights have resumed from Muscat and also relief operations planned from Jeddah. Hundreds of Indians are still stuck in transit hubs.
Now, the government is assured that every citizen will be brought home safely, even as they warn that the volatile situation on the ground remains a significant challenge. Indigo, in fact, has planned 10 special relief operations from Jeddah to India on the 3rd of March, that's today, to facilitate the return of stranded passengers subject to required approvals and prevailing airspace conditions. For those still in the region, 24/7 emergency helplines are also active. Let's just listen in.
एयर स्पेस बड़ा बिजी है, वहाँ पे इंटरसेप्ट तो हो रही है बराबर, मिसाइल गिरी कुछ भी नहीं है, जितने भी गिरे हैं वो मलबे ही गिरे हैं, उसी कारण इंजरी हुई है। बाकी यूएस का आई थिंक एयर डिफेंस सिस्टम में तो बड़ा सेफ है वहाँ पे माहौल, बट हाँ वो थोड़े बहुत मलबे गिरने से ज़रूर मर रहे हैं, बट हाँ आप देख सकते हो, फील कर सकते हो वहाँ पे इंटरसेप्ट हो रहे हैं कॉन्स्टेंटली।
इट इज़ ओके, वी कुड सी द मिसाइल्स एंड ऑल फ्रॉम आवर हाउस एंड बट इट वाज ओके।
warm welcome. You're watching CNN News 18. I'm Akanksha Swaroop. The conflict that was triggered by the United States and Israel is quickly spiraling out of control, with 700 civilians already dead in Iran. The conflict is now expanding over to Lebanon, and various other US consulates also being targeted, from Pakistan to Riyadh.
Absolutely, and that is what we are bringing to you today as we dive deeper into this conflict that has expanded into this regional war. I'm Griha Atul. Thank you so much for staying here on CNN News 18. Let's now begin with the headlines.
West Asia war enters its fourth day as fresh explosions rock Beirut and Tehran, intensifying the regional conflict and raising global concerns.
US forces clear Iranian ships from Gulf of Oman, releases video showing an Iranian ship in the Gulf of Oman being destroyed.
US Embassy in Riyadh struck by 2 suspected Iranian drones. Saudi Defense Ministry has confirmed the attack, says it caused limited fire and minor material damage. Security forces on high alert.
Donald Trump warns after US Embassy in Saudi's Riyadh hit by 2 drones, says, quote, "You will find out soon."
6 US soldiers killed in action, while the remains of 2 previously unaccounted for troops were recovered after earlier strikes.
Amid the Iran-Israel conflict, an Abu Dhabi-Delhi flight lands safely at the New Delhi airport. Passengers describe heavy missile interceptions overhead.
Netanyahu thanks Prime Minister Modi for standing with Israel amid the Iran war. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has spoken at great length with Prime Minister Modi about the ongoing situation in the West Asia region.
Marco Rubio warns that the hardest military blows are still ahead, signals further escalation in the region.
After attack, the US Embassy in Islamabad and the Consulate General in Lahore and Karachi have cancelled all visa appointments till 6th of March.
Indigo cancels 43 flights to and from the Middle East for today. Let's now talk about fresh escalations that have been reported in Beirut and Tehran as the West Asian conflict has entered its 4th day. We're talking about explosions that continue to rock key areas, and this has further intensified this regional war that we are talking about.
On the ground, there are no signs of de-escalation, with tensions mounting and retaliatory strikes growing increasingly ferocious across the region. Remember, civilian locations are being targeted not just in Iran, but across the Middle East.
Absolutely, and this is what we are looking at the moment. If we take a look at the big screens, and these are the visuals that are coming. The first one, of course, is coming in from Qatar. This is a major development that one is talking about. Let's in fact take a look at these various areas. Qatar, Tehran for that matter, Beirut, Lebanon. There is also these visuals that have been released by the US Central Command. So all of this really coming to fore, and we'd one by one take a look at this escalation.
So these are visuals in fact released by the US CENTCOM. As you can see, these are a barrage of missiles which have been released in overnight strikes. Qatar, Beirut, Lebanon, Tehran in Iran. These visuals in fact have been released by the US CENTCOM itself. Now what should be kept in mind is that Beirut is in fact Lebanese capital. Why is Lebanon now inadvertently getting involved in this conflict? That is because it's also the headquarters of the proxy militia of Iran, which is
And
Hezbollah.
Akansha, we have to take this quick piece of breaking news at the moment, as a Shahid 136 drone has delivered a significant impact on a building in Dubai where American military personnel were stationed. Now this is big. We were talking about the US Embassy attack in Riyadh. Now we are looking at this particular drone, which is an Iranian drone, much talked about. That has made a significant impact in Dubai, and American military personnel were very much stationed there.
Keep in mind that this is in fact the very set of visuals that we are bringing to you. That drone, the Shahid 136, actually striking this civilian location in Dubai. All right, you see that entire drone actually going banging into one of the buildings and actually leading to an explosion over here. One has to keep in mind, and Griha, perhaps you can also weigh in, that UAE is actually bearing the maximum brunt of these civilian targeting.
And this is Dubai again, and this is where the repatriation flights have in fact begun operation, and while that is happening, we see another major drone attack, and this one particularly significantly impacting the military personnel over there who were very much stationed in this area. If we can get in our producers and the director to in fact get in the sound that we are having, the NAT can be in fact brought up on this visual so that we know what exactly is happening. The kind of
explosion that you can see, that too created just by a UAV actually. You look at, so, as we've been weighing in major explosion, we just heard it. What we can tell you is that the geographical coordinates that are fed into these UAVs are initially meant to be targeting US assets, but at the moment they are inevitably banging into these civilian targets. Getting breaking inputs. Foreign Minister of Iran, Abbas Araghchi, in fact, has reacted to Marco Rubio, the US Secretary of State, saying that Rubio admitted what we all knew. US has entered a war of choice on behalf of Israel. There was never any so-called Iranian threat. Shedding of both American and Iranian blood is thus on Israel first. American people deserve better and should take their country.
Absolutely, Araghchi. Weren't we really expecting such a reaction that was coming in from Iran, particularly after that assertion by Marco Rubio on film, where he said that we had no choice but to enter the war. Had Iran been attacked by, let's say, an Israel, they would have ended up attacking us, and that's why we wanted to attack them first. That was the kind of assertion that came in from Rubio, and now we are seeing this reaction by the foreign minister, where he's pretty much really quoting what Marco Rubio has said and then reacting on exactly the same.
On that note, let's quickly go across to our guests. I'm joined in by Ambassador Deepak Vora, former diplomat, also joined in by Major General Sanjay Miston, who's a defense expert. We will, in fact, be joined in by Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis, also who's a senior fellow at the Defense Priorities. But many thanks to you, Ambassador Vora. If I could have you weigh in on this reaction that has come in first from the US Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, of course, placing the buck onto Israel, as Abbas Araghchi, the Iranian foreign minister, has gone on to say that this is a war of choice that the United States has entered into.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Always a pleasure to be with you early in the morning. Can you hear me?
Please go ahead.
Right. Thank you very much. Delightful to wake up and talk about this rubbish that is going on over there. Couple of things that I'd like to highlight, and which you have done, but I'd like to repeat it for the millions of people who watch your program. Where is the Muslim Ummah? I'm interested in knowing. I thought Iran was an Islamic country, one of the 57 members of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. Not a choo from any of these jokers. So it has nothing to do with religion. National interest trumps religion when it comes to issues like this. Not even humanitarian aid, ma'am. Have you noticed this? No one has got. Forget about these crowds of lunatics who go around attacking US diplomatic missions and so on. No one has sent $1 to Iran. Iran is alone. Now, who is to blame for this? Iran itself. The Arab nations would like to see the mullah regime defanged, if not eliminated. This is the first reality which I observe in this region where I've spent 20 years. What has been said, what is going to happen next? Donald Trump means what he says. He said they haven't even seen a small percentage of American power, which means it's going to get worse. Till such time as Iran, there's nobody left to surrender. Till such time as Iran says, all right, I've been thrashed enough, stop. Who's going to say that? I believe it's the fellow sitting in the United States, the son of the Shah, probably some kind of a rallying figure. I've seen this in the past. He's going to come. He's going to provide what is called the healing touch. I don't know what he's going to heal. But ma'am, the longer this continues, take it from me.
All right.
Iran will take 50 years to recover. It's been devastated. I mean, Ukraine has only lost 90% of its infrastructure. Iran is in the process of losing 100%. So I just hope, my heart hopes that something positive will emerge. Iran has widened the conflict, as you have rightly pointed out, to all the Arab fellows, and they, in a tiny little Qatar, has said, we'll teach you a lesson, you don't do things like this. But my mind says it's not going to end anytime soon till the mullahs are thrown into the dustbin of history.
All right,
I'm sorry,
even the Americans are saying that. In fact, POTUS has put it out there that it's going to be 4 to 5 weeks. And that's oddly, in fact, being juxtaposed with this statement of Marco Rubio as well. Let me bring in Daniel Davis in on this. The fact that this is a very ideological line that has been taken by Arakshi, where he's not just quoted by what has come out of Washington, he's also said that this is against the people of America. How is America going to counter this statement?
Well, I know a lot of people would like to hear that, and certainly in Iran they want that to be the case, but it hasn't gotten that much interest. I certainly noticed in my reading of it, I heard it immediately and was infuriated by it, that the United States would be drawn into a war, not because we needed to, not because our security was threatened, but because we felt pressured by the leader of another country who themselves was not threatened by Iran, but that they wanted to attack them. And the fact that we have now admitted that that's the justification does open up some really painful questions. The question is going to be in the United States, what is going to be done about that? And unfortunately, just the recent history, I doubt it's going to have much of an impact, because once you get into conflict, people will say, well, we'll figure that out later. But first, we have to worry about the war we have on our hands. And especially because American troops have been killed in action already, the focus is going to be on that, which unfortunately is not really the good thing, because we do need to see this. We should not go further into a war that we don't need to fight. But, you know, there's all kinds of mixed up accusations now. Rubio admitted that, but then Secretary of War Hegseth said that there was a different set of standards. President Trump said there was a different reason. So which one are you going to believe? And the problem is only one man matters, and that's Donald Trump.
Lieutenant Colonel Davis, stay with us. We're getting in some more breaking inputs. In fact, the targeting continues. This, as the Iraqi resistance group has also reacted, which we will be bringing to you in just a bit, and more breaking inputs. But perhaps, Lieutenant Colonel Davis, you could also weigh in on the nature of how this civilian targeting, not just in the US allies in the Middle East, is also taking a toll in Iran. I woke up this morning learning of the news that 700 civilians are already dead in Iran.
Yeah, I mean, it's just terrible. And, you know, and you have this when you have this this bombing where you're going into cities, and it looks like a lot of this is coming, a lot of the shots you've seen go into Tehran and some of these other locations. Obviously, the one big one that hit this school of young girls, and that's the biggest tragedy so far. But there's a whole lot more than that. And when you are firing into cities, that's what you're going to have. And then you look at the same thing. Lots of shots from Iran into cities in Dubai, into Bahrain, into Tel Aviv, etc. So this is going on both sides. It doesn't look like either side is following the laws of war. It looks like both sides are trying to cause civilian pain on the other side to try to get their governments to capitulate to them. And I think all it's going to do is cause both sides to dig in deeper and to not give in and to galvanize their desire to continue.
We're getting in some breaking inputs. I'm so sorry to interrupt you there. In fact, more information coming in, that the Iraqi resistance force has now admitted to in fact targeting Erbil, the US troops based in Erbil. And remember, Erbil is now on top of the targets as far as Iraq is concerned, because Erbil is where the US troops are actually housed. And bringing us more details on that news story is Prithween Walia, who's also joining us. Prithween, what can you tell us? Are there some visuals also being shared?
Yeah, I'd like to request our camera person to quickly zoom in on these visuals a little bit. Iraqi resistance group says we've carried out this drone attack on a hotel housing US troops in Erbil. Now, Iraqi Shiite militia also joining the war, and we're seeing now them attack some of these US troops stationed in different parts of Iraq. So slowly the conflict is escalating to a level where we're not just seeing some of these Middle East countries where the US troops, US military infrastructure is being attacked, but these are visuals, and I want to quickly play it from the start. Iraqi resistance group says they've carried out this drone attack. You see a big explosion here right in the middle of your screens, late in the night possibly, and this is an attack on a hotel which houses US troops in Erbil. If you quickly allow me, I also want to put out this one update that's been shared by the Israel War Room social media handle. US forces ramping up, they say. 15 additional American refuelers backed by fighter jets on their way to Middle East. So that's the kind of military buildup we're seeing.
Exactly what the US President Donald Trump also was saying, that over the next, say, span of 1 week, they will be ramping up the entire attack force. And in the days ahead, there's going to be pinpointed bombardment. So that's certainly not good news for the Middle East. I'm going to quickly toss over to Griha as well. Perhaps Griha can take us through some visuals.
Right, let's take a look at the big wall here in the studios as we are constantly keeping you up to speed with what really is going on when it is about this war and the forever escalating conditions. The first set of visuals, of course, are coming in as the US forces go on to destroy Iranian offensive missiles. And these are the visuals, the imagery that we have for our viewers here. These are visuals that have been released by the Central Command, and they in fact take a look at the assets, Iranian assets that have been destroyed, and you can see how there is fire, there is smoke, all of this, and which is what the US would like to project, that they have a significant heft as far as this war is concerned, and that's why visuals like these become absolutely important. If we take a look at the next set of slides, we also in fact are learning of that one major attack in the US embassy in Riyadh that has been attacked by Iranian drones, and that is all that we woke up to as far as this morning is concerned. Everybody has been speaking about how massive this attack is, and you can see the impact right now hitting the Iranian drones, hitting the US embassy in Riyadh, and very, very soon we see that explosion, and this is a massive explosion that one is talking about. You see fire and eventual smoke that goes out. And this was a big attack. Remember, US assets in Saudi Arabia have been attacked. In the entire Gulf region, they have been attacked. We had seen a refinery in Saudi that was attacked, Aramco for that matter. And that was one major escalation.
Let's also take our viewers through all of those US assets that have in fact been attacked. In the latest, what we can tell our viewers is that the consulate in Riyadh has been attacked. This after, remember, the consulates in Karachi, in Islamabad and Lahore also were attacked as well.
And these as well are very interesting visuals there. We're talking about escalations, we're talking about rockets flying across the sky over Dubai. Again, going back to how the repatriation flights are still underway in small capacity. And while all of this is happening, I possibly, in fact, this is what the passengers were also talking about, how the interceptions really work here.
All right, going to in fact request my director to actually prompt us the next video. There are more strikes happening. This is on Mazandaran district in western Tehran. So Tehran, of course, the Iranian capital, bearing the brunt of it. As you can see, plumes of smoke coming out. And as we have the visuals over here, we do not know if this entire explosion has been caused by a missile or is it a UAV that caused it? Because remember, Iran is utilizing a lot of drones to make these attacks on civilian targets, particularly buildings as well. Griha.
Right, absolutely. And let's now take a look at the next set of visuals. And these are Israeli intercepting the barrage of Iranian missiles. And we already know how significant the Israeli Iron Dome is. And these are the interceptions that we've managed to, in fact, bring as part of this visual representation. All of the Iranian missiles have been intercepted by the Iron Dome. And there you see, we've also marked them out in circles. And there you can see the kind of barrage of missiles that Israel has to witness, and all of that intercepted and ably destroyed.
Another explosion and an anti-rocket, in fact, missile that's being spotted flying over Lebanon. This is this entire visual. As you can see, this missile was actually right here when it actually struck this civilian target. It looks like a densely populated residential area. Plumes of smoke, the entire explosion can in fact be seen over here. And what's in fact important to note over here, most of these targetings are being done at night. These are the latest visuals that we are bringing to you in the conflict that's brewed overnight itself.
Right, absolutely.
In fact, quickly
Akansha,
get
do
in more
stay on
inputs.
with us.
Yeah.
In fact, Siddhant is also with us on the broadcast, and he's tracking every development that is to do with this major escalation that one is talking about. Siddhant, we were just mentioning about how we all woke up to this US embassy attack in Saudi Arabia. That is massive. After that, the kind of developments that one is seeing, because underhandedly, there were several reports that also spoke about a Saudi Arabia involvement and a coaxing that happened not just on part of Israel, but also Saudi Arabia for the US to go ahead and attack Iran.
Well, that's right, Greha. In fact, today's attack on the U.S. embassy in Riyadh is very, very significant. So far, we have been reporting that how U.S. assets, U.S. Military bases were targeted by Iranians. But this is for the first time that a mission has been targeted by Iranians. Two of the drones could hit the mission building. There was a fume which could be seen coming out of the premises of the U.S. Embassy. The third drone was intercepted by the air defense systems, perhaps leading to further escalation in the region. Now, there are two scenarios here, Greha. One, that the scope of diplomacy is very little, because those who have been mediating have been urging all sides to remain calm or to take path of dialogue and diplomacy, like countries like Oman, Qatar. Their civilian infrastructure have also been hit by Iran. Point number one. Point number two, now Iran wants to prove a point that on one end, where US is asking for a regime change, US wants to build this narrative that Iranian regime is over, etc., etc. So Iran wants to prove this point that Iran is strong enough to survive this battle. Not only that, Iran is strong enough to hit the US assets in the region and to cause significant damage to the US assets and US personnel. So this is the message which Iran is sending right now to US, Israel, and the other allied forces in the region. So definitely, things could go worse in days to come. US has to say that they are going to go after. Now, the second goal is obviously to end the resources, the Iranian resources, the nuclear, the missile stockpile. So, in fact, the recent video which has been released by US CENTCOM perhaps is of an Iranian asset, the missile reserve, which was hit by the US forces. So US officials have to say that the second goal in this war for them is now to go after the Iranian assets, their missile stockpile, their resources, and perhaps that is exactly what they're doing.
Many thanks to you, Siddhant. We will keep coming back to you throughout the course of the day as and when more information pours in. In fact, breaking inputs coming in. This is the first reaction of the day coming in from the Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance. In an interview to Fox News on military operations in Iran, Vance has said that the President wants to make it clear to the Iranians and to the world that he's not going to rest until he accomplishes that all-important objective of ensuring that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. Let's also listen in to what he told Fox News.
We have a lot of capacity here. I think there's a lot of chatter about what our objectives is, what our goal is. I mean, I think the president's been extremely clear about our objectives, and it's that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. But there's also been a lot of conversation about what are our capabilities. And look, I know this stuff. Obviously, I'm not going to reveal classified information here on air, but the President of the United States knows what we're able to do. He knows that we have much greater capacity to inflict damage on the Iranian nuclear program, but also on various missiles that threaten our troops. As you've seen, they've been launching those at our troops for much of the past 3 days. So I think the president has made it very clear that the United States has a lot of optionality here. And, we could go for a little bit longer. We could go for a lot longer. But I think the president just wants to make it clear to the Iranians and to the world that he is not going to rest until he accomplishes that all-important objective of ensuring that Iran can't have a nuclear weapon, not just for the next few years, not just because we obliterated Fordow or some other enrichment facility, but because the Iranians themselves commit long-term to not building a nuclear weapon.
And let me take this across to our guests who continue to be with us on the broadcast. Ambassador Vora, you heard J.D. Vance over there. Why is it that responses from the United States of America continue to come across as rather disjointed? At the first time, they had mentioned about how there is going to, at least in the background, a regime change. Then we had Pete Hegseth saying that we are not looking at a regime change. Then it is J.D. Vance again back to talking about how Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon.
You've You've caught it very beautifully. There is a contradiction. Nevertheless, I prefer to believe, since I've been involved in this in my own country, sometimes we practice what is called strategic deception. We speak with many voices so that the fellow we are trying to clobber doesn't know what the reality is. My own understanding, after I've seen what President Trump has been doing in different countries, including most recently in Venezuela, the feeling there is that America does what it wants to, and there's no one to challenge it. Very interesting, ma'am. I just thought I'd point out that China is quieter than the proverbial dead rat in your neighborhood. Russia has made a little bit of noise, but that's about it. Nobody, but nobody, has come to support Iran. And that itself is going to encourage the United States to hit even harder. President Trump said they've only seen a bit of my power. I have much more than this. So you can expect that the conflict will intensify. But I also believe that some kind of a solution will have to be found. You made a reference, or your commentator made a reference, to the destruction of Iran. No, it's the destruction of the mullah regime. And the regime change basically means that one mullah should not be replaced by another hardline mullah. It means that we should have some kind of a pro-Western is not the right word, sometimes kind of a liberal democratic setup that emerges in Tehran. Will that happen? Of course it will happen. We had a fellow called the Shah who was booted out. He was no Democrat, but at least there was peace in that region, etc., while he was around. And the Iranians were pretty happy. So I feel that the older Iranians and even the youngsters who see huge inflation, their currency is plummeting, the education system has collapsed, energy facilities are now being targeted. They have no jobs. They would be very happy to see this 46-year-old regime that has given them nothing, ma'am, and I say this very deliberately, given them nothing but misery and fed them on the snake oil of Islam. They would be very happy to see it go. That's what I see happening, a movement from within. Why it hasn't happened so far? Because of the repression by the regime. We did see some upsurge a couple of months ago. Maybe that is the time that the United States should have attacked so they could coordinate it with the domestic uprising. But maybe Israel wasn't ready. Israel stopped them and said, wait, we need some more missile defense, anti-missile defenses, etc. Until that happens, please don't hit.
Ambassador Vora, stay with us. We're getting in some more breaking inputs. There are high-resolution satellite images now coming in which show clear damage from yesterday's Iranian one-way attack drones on Saudi Arabia's largest facility on the Persian Gulf. Now, this is one of those largest facilities that we are talking about. These are high-resolution satellite images which are showing the kind of damage that has been done from yesterday's Iranian one-way attack drones on Saudi Arabia's largest oil facility. And we are talking about the Aramco oil facility over here. This is the latest satellite image, ladies and gentlemen, which has been released now. And remember, this is one of the crucial ones. It's been temporarily even shut down. Aramco even later came out with a statement that this is not going to be impacting their overall oil production output. But in fact, let's quickly take this forward with Griha, who is also in the newsroom with more details to that.
Absolutely, Akanksha, thank you so much for that. In fact, lot of developments that are being tracked by our colleagues right here. It's a live newsroom. We have Kritsveen here. She is, in fact, keenly looking at this flight data. Kritsveen, what do we have here?
This is what prompted me to go to Flight Radar's official website. But I'll quickly show you this one update that's come in. Both Etihad flights diverted to Muscat. Emirates appears to be heading back to Mumbai. And this is them showing the flight pathway as well. So UAE still hasn't resumed flight operations is what this tells us very clearly. So when I went to Flight Radar 24, you can clearly see the air traffic here. There's not too much happening around UAE. We've seen flights resume partially from Saudi Arabia back and forth. Oman as well, a limited resumption is what we're seeing. But much of UAE, remember, still not seeing flight resumption properly kick in. The situation is no different in some of the other areas in Middle East as well. But look at this. I think these are some domestic flights as well. In Qatar, for instance, Oman, for instance.
UAE is drawing a complete blank. What is the problem here? Because
look at this as well. This is the airport disruption map. This also clearly highlights how 64 flights have been cancelled from Dubai International Airport, which is indicative of how there's not much activity that's underway here. Even Doha, Ahmad International Airport, 28 flights cancelled, but there is a little bit of partial resumption we see in other parts of Gulf nations.
Okay, Chrissy, why don't you dig deeper? Because yesterday we did go ahead and break this news story that there are repatriation flights that will be functional in a limited capacity from Dubai. Now, this is concerning. More people who were supposed to come back, and we do know about the Indians who are there in Dubai, and how they are supposed to come back remains the big question. I'll come back to you. Yeah. We also have Haim here. Haim has another update. Remember, we were talking about this big attack at the Aramco refinery in Saudi Arabia, and how this attack by Iran has gone beyond just US assets. They are going on to attack the energy, in fact, bases in the Gulf nation. Saudi Arabia has been massively impacted. Haim, what do we have here?
So this is the facility in Saudi Arabia. This is the largest, it's a key transit hub as well. This is the Ras Tanura refinery that we're talking about. Let's just zoom in here. This is a result of the Iranian drone attack that we saw yesterday, and this is the major damage that this key transit hub has also sustained. Now, of course, we have to remember that this comes at a time when the Strait of Hormuz is also not functioning as it does, and it handles 20% of the world's oil flow. So this is going to further add to that disruption as well, at a time when we're already seeing crude prices surge to the steepest that we've seen it in 4 years. So we can expect further disruptions there as well. If I could just zoom in on this, you can see this particular area. This is the Ras Tanura refinery that we're talking about in Saudi Aramco, and the damage that it has sustained as a result of the drone strikes that we saw yesterday.
Visuals say it all. Thank you so much for that, Haim. With that, let me in fact toss it over to my colleague Akanksha. It's over to you in the studio.
We're getting in some breaking inputs. The Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu has in fact reacted. He's saying that the war with Iran will be quick and decisive, not endless. In fact, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has even praised the US President Donald Trump, saying there's never been a president like Donald J. Trump. His resoluteness, his decisiveness, his clarity of thinking, the way he gets things, gets right to the crux of things. This is what Netanyahu's had to say. Let's also listen in to what he said before we take a question from Siddhant.
There's never been a president like Donald J. Trump. His resoluteness, his decisiveness, his clarity of thinking, the way he gets things, gets right to the crux of things. It cuts through all the fluff, cuts through the chase, gets down to the main point, and it gets down to the main action that needs to be taken. And I think for Israel, and I think for the countries of the free world, let me tell you, I think for the world, we're very lucky to have him as the leader of the free world, and in fact, the leader of the world. He's brought America back to being the leader of the world.
So a big claim coming in from the Israeli Prime Minister, saying that this will be a quick, decisive war. And let's quickly take that forward with Siddhant Mishra, who continues to bring us all the latest inputs. Siddhant, if you can add more details to that input. All right, we'll try and bring Siddhant. He's not on the broadcast right now. Let's quickly take that forward with Ambassador Vora. Ambassador Vora, going by the ripple effect that we are seeing build up across the Middle East, do you think it will be as quick and decisive as is being claimed by the Israeli Prime Minister? Not to forget what Donald Trump is also saying, that it is not regime change that they are looking at.
Well, I don't know what he means by not regime change. They just want to get rid of the present very hardcore Islamic system or the regime that there is in Iran. But when you say about a spillover effect, ma'am, nobody really wants to fight the United States. The Arabs are all buddies with the United States. It's only Iran which could have posed a challenge to Israel. All the others had been eliminated. Syria did mess around for a while, then their leader got booted out, and a former terrorist suddenly became Donald Trump's darling, handsome fellow. And he now tries to run the country. Ditto Libya, ditto wherever, Iraq, etc. My own feeling is the one country that could have challenged Israel, which is also America's pet, is Iran, and that is now being defanged. This war is going to end sooner than anybody can imagine. Saying it'll take 4 weeks or 3 weeks. No, once America unleashes, and I believe that, I've seen that, unleashes its full firepower, the Iranian people will rise, man. It's hurting them very badly. I have friends there. There are occasionally I'm able to get messages, although they have suspended the internet. Sometimes through VPN, I hear from them. They say, we are in deep trouble. And I think that the uprising will come sooner than later. The regime so far is trying to hit back, but hit back at what? Hit back at the other Arabs? That's a violation of their sovereignty. You can't just say that there's an American base on planet X and then you want to hit all of planet X. That doesn't work, man. That's not the way to. Iran is isolating itself. I think the fellows who determine its foreign policy should read Chanakya and figure out how to deal with the situation in which their country is being flattened and no one is lifting a little finger to help them. So I think that itself is a lesson that many dictators around the world will learn, ma'am, from what is happening.
Right. Ambassador Vora, thank you so much for that assessment. Do stay on with us. We are getting in more reports. CNN International is putting before us all of the updates that continue to trickle in from the Gulf nations, from the entire West Asia and the Middle East as this conflict is only escalating. Let's take a look at that report.
I guess let's just start right there with that briefing you received. Did you learn anything in it that would convince you that Iran posed an imminent threat to the United States that merited this war?
Well, first of all, Aaron, we now have at least 6 dead American casualties, and our prayers are with those families. Our military is executing extraordinarily well. But to your question, I have seen no evidence of any imminent threat to the United States posed by Iran. There were threats towards Israel, although arguably even whether they were imminent. But the idea that we had to act at this moment, at this time, because of a direct imminent threat to the United States, I have seen absolutely no evidence of that.
The United States says they knew that Israel was going to strike, and that Iran in response would retaliate in part against the United States, and so therefore the United States needed to come with Israel and strike first. Does that logic, as he has laid it out, make sense?
Well, does it make sense if we are going to outsource our foreign policy decisions and choices to another government? Listen, I am an extraordinarily strong supporter of Israel, but do I want Bibi Netanyahu making the decision of when and where Israel will strike and then bring Americans into a war? I think that's an issue that needs to be debated. This is Donald Trump's war of choice. The Secretary, I think, has as much acknowledged that. And even with that, we have had now 4 different explanations of what our goals are. First, it was to try to get rid of Iran's nuclear capabilities, which supposedly had been obliterated by the bombing 7 months ago. Then it was to eliminate Iran's missile capability, which would threaten Israel or potentially our bases, but no imminent threat. I heard today questions about sinking Iran's navy, which that's a new one. And then we have this question as well where the president, at least based on his words, has said he wants regime change and has asked the Iranian people to rise up. The question I have is if the Iranian people, and I shed no tears for the death of the Iranian leadership, who have been awful, but if the President of the United States is asking the Iranian people to rise up in the streets, and then the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, who are brutal, murder 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 Iranian protesters, do we have any further moral obligation than to go in to support them with even potentially boots on the ground? This is exactly why we have seen from our history, starting a war in the Middle East may be easy, ending one is always difficult.
Okay, more breaking news coming in. The US has released a video showing an Iranian ship in the Gulf of Oman being destroyed. US forces could be seen clearing Iranian ships from Gulf of Oman and have also released this video showing an Iranian ship in the Gulf of Oman being destroyed. So that's the kind of escalation that we're looking at in the Gulf of Oman. Iranian ship that's been destroyed and US forces sharing that one footage as video proof that you see on your screens as well. Now it makes one thing amply clear that the United States, especially given what President Donald Trump has said in the last address of his, wherein he said expect this war to continue for the next 4 to 5 weeks, this clearly means that the United States is also going to be upping the ante militarily. That's what's expected on US's part going forward as well. And Iran, remember, is also not willing to back down. In fact, much of the Middle East has been drawn into this war and rather forcefully has been drawn into this war, isn't it, Haim? It's interesting how the US has made it amply clear there's no question of giving up as yet. Now, the focus is whether or not we'll see similar strikes of the same magnitude being carried out to ensure that the ones who are now replacing the eliminated leadership are also done away with. That's the big focus story. At least a lot of analysts at the moment are weighing in on this. Speaking of these ships, let's not forget the story in the Strait of Hormuz. That one passage is responsible for 1/5 of global oil supply, and Iran has formally closed it. So that's another case of concern.
Now, of course, when we take a look at the Strait of Hormuz as well, let's just not forget that the US CENTCOM is definitely upping the rhetoric here by saying, of course, that about 2 days ago, there were about 11 naval ships in the Gulf of Oman. These are the visuals that they've shared. These are the visuals by the US CENTCOM. So they are, of course, upping the rhetoric here. When we talk about the diplomatic solution to this, we know that Iranian leadership right now is also saying that they are not ready to get on the negotiating table. Trump there saying that that perhaps is their only option. How long can the Iranian regime, whatever is left of it, sustain this fight? That's something that remains to be seen as well. And Kritsveen, in fact, those are some of the conversations that we've been having with experts as well as to what the other options are on the table. And many would contend there that continuing this fight is just not going to be sustainable for at least the Iranian regime.
Yeah, not sustainable for Iranian regime is one. For the rest of the Middle East that's been forcefully drawn into this war, for how long are they going to continue to take this? And let's not forget, they may have all these conversations with the United States very, very soon because there is collateral damage. And we've heard several experts say that some of these nations who have nothing to do with what's happening between Israel, Iran and the United States, their normal life has taken a toll. Remember, flight cancellations, though we've seen partly resumed, there is a lot of inconvenience that this entire region is facing, and hence expect these countries also to rake this with the United States. Speaking of how the entire world stands impacted in some way or the other, India is also ramping up its largest rescue effort in years as the West Asia conflict intensifies. Several Indians have returned to India while thousands remain stranded. With major airspaces closed, the Ministry of External Affairs is coordinating with missions in Dubai, Tel Aviv and Tehran to secure safe passage, while some flights have resumed from Muscat and also relief operations planned from Jeddah. Hundreds of Indians are still stuck in transit hubs.
Now, the government is assured that every citizen will be brought home safely, even as they warn that the volatile situation on the ground remains a significant challenge. Indigo, in fact, has planned 10 special relief operations from Jeddah to India on the 3rd of March, that's today, to facilitate the return of stranded passengers subject to required approvals and prevailing airspace conditions. For those still in the region, 24/7 emergency helplines are also active. Let's just listen in.
एयर स्पेस बड़ा बिजी है, वहाँ पे इंटरसेप्ट तो हो रही है बराबर, मिसाइल गिरी कुछ भी नहीं है, जितने भी गिरे हैं वो मलबे ही गिरे हैं, उसी कारण इंजरी हुई है। बाकी यूएस का आई थिंक एयर डिफेंस सिस्टम में तो बड़ा सेफ है वहाँ पे माहौल, बट हाँ वो थोड़े बहुत मलबे गिरने से ज़रूर मर रहे हैं, बट हाँ आप देख सकते हो, फील कर सकते हो वहाँ पे इंटरसेप्ट हो रहे हैं कॉन्स्टेंटली।
It is okay. We could see the missiles and all from our house, and But it was okay. The government was cooperative. They were intercepting everything. There were being alerts sent. So overall, it is a little bit scary. But then we were safe.
And 6 U.S. service members have been killed in action. U.S. forces recently recovered the remains of 2 previously unaccounted for service members from a facility that was struck during Iran's initial attacks in the region, and that, their viewers, is the human cost of the volatility and aggression that we are seeing in West Asia, result of the U.S.-Israel joint operations in West Asia in Iran that we're seeing. 6 U.S. service members who've been killed in action so far.
And that number could be far higher, isn't it, Haim? Because let's not forget, several US military bases have come under direct attack, and Iran has been the one launching these series of strikes on some of these US military bases. And again, worryingly, these bases are stationed in these Gulf nations that have had nothing to do with this war, and that's likely a concern that they could also be raising in the next few days to come if the non-stop bombardments continue. But for now, 6 US service members, we're learning, have been killed in action. Where exactly, we're yet to pick up details.
Right.
But Donald Trump has also made it amply clear, though it was the United States and Israel to initiate this military action against
All right, tensions are rising in Beirut and all of Middle East. This because of Iran's ferocious retaliation. In fact, the US president has warned of a more series, in fact, a wave of attacks which will now be targeting Iran.
Absolutely, and we're tracking every development, and this one is the latest piece of breaking news that we are getting on the broadcast. And we are learning that there are more details that are now emerging after Khamenei's death. Senior Iranian officials are saying that Israel hacked into Tehran's extensive traffic camera network in order to track the bodyguards of the Iranian supreme leader, now dead, Khamenei, and also other top Iranian officials. This is massive because they are not only talking about traffic details or the cameras that have been accessed by Israelis, they also go on to say that Israel gained access to these cameras years ago. How was this not really checked is also a major lapse that is there on part of Iran. And they've also found that one particular camera was angled in such a way that it showed exactly where the members of Khamenei's security team parked their cars. That's a major security breach that we're talking about. Through these cameras, Israeli intelligence built files on the grounds, addresses, the work schedules, and whom they were assigned to, in fact, protect. All of this surveillance, this is high security surveillance that was accessed by Israel only because of traffic camera
Let's
footage.
quickly take that forward with Siddhant. Siddhant, remember, there are reports already doing the rounds that the intelligence inputs that Israel and the United States both had were in fact laser sharp, and that's very much apparent in this daytime assault that was conducted by the US and Israel in this joint strike, going by the details that are now trickling in.
Well, that's right, Akanksha. So the cutting edge technology, the sophisticated technology which Israel possesses is not something new. In fact, last year we saw that how there were a series of pager blasts which took place in Lebanon, and most of these pagers were with the Hezbollah commanders, and how this entire network of pagers were supplied through a company in Europe, etc., etc. We don't know about that. Now we're getting to know that that the CCTV cameras in Iran, which the IRGC used for the surveillance purposes on its people, perhaps were hacked by Israelis almost a year back. And now this report it has been published by Financial Times, and through these cameras only the Israeli intel could manage to locate Khamenei's movement. One camera was particularly angled in such a way so that where Khamenei's security parked their vehicles can be established. In fact, one of the officers in the Israeli intelligence has been quoted in this report, and he says that we know Tehran as much as we know Jerusalem. So, that's the level of penetration that Israelis have in Iran. And this is not something new, Akanksha. This is not something which we are reporting for the first time. In fact, this report also says that Israel and the US had also disrupted the cellular services around the compound where Khamenei was
Do
present.
stay
So
on
that,
with us, Saddam. Do stay on with us. So we also have Major General Sanjay Maestan, who's joining us right here in the Noida studios of CNN News 18. Major Maestan, what is your assessment? I mean, we're talking about high tech, but this is as normal as traffic camera footage, and that was used by the Israelis. They had access to those cameras years ago. They were in fact compiling all of that data, and that's how they went about eliminating a head of state. This has never before happened since World War II. We're talking about something massive and as minuscule as a traffic camera imagery that was accessed by Israelis and used to eliminate Khamenei.
Yeah, absolutely right. So it clearly proves, that low technology also is equally important. And the way Israelis have penetrated their systems, speaks volumes of their, I would say, professional capabilities. And I think in the military parlance also I would like to highlight that it is more than yourself. You have to know more about the enemy. And they know everything, and I agree with the statement made by your reporter. So they are totally aware about enemy's tactics, his intelligence and everything, and they have penetrated into his entire system. And the intelligence of Mossad is too good. We have seen what happened in Lebanon, those pager attacks, the way they did, the way they targeted Ismail Hania in Tehran, and also Nasrallah in Lebanon, and all his successors. So what it proves is that the intelligence penetration in the systems is so effective. And in fact, let me also state that the Iranians today would be doubting each other who's giving out information and who's on the payrolls of CIA and Mossad. So this is what the whole issue is, and this clearly proves that any innovative method has been resorted to. Traffic cameras, getting everything through that. Anything is possible. And I was also in one of the TV channels where there was a Pakistani, he came out with some other angle. I do not know, he states that last year when Shahbaz Sharif had visited and met Khamenei, he had presented a watch, and probably that watch was also being tracked. So all possible angles are there, but technology is extremely important, and even low cost technology, it is innovation which is more effective.
Major General Maestan, I'm sure you'll agree that there was conscious effort behind making this a joint strike as a daytime joint strike, what Epic Fury has been, only to ensure that the entire government machinery and all the government officials of Khamenei are at their desks. And so it's not just the elimination of the Ayatollah, but his entire family members and the entire government machinery. There will be, I'm sure, more details emerging in. In fact, just yesterday, we were also made aware that the IAEA's software, which is Mosaic, also helped in intel sharing. And in fact, the IAEA chief had shared that intel input with Israel as well. So we'll keep getting in more information in terms of how this entire joint strike was conducted.
Right, absolutely. We're going to a very short break. With that, keeping you up to speed with every assessment that is there as far as this big escalation goes. A statement that's been issued by the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. The INB Ministry has indicated that civil aviation authorities are closely monitoring the evolving airspace situation across parts of the Middle East. Officials say special arrangements are underway to assist stranded passengers, while airlines are deploying extra capacity and coordinating with foreign authorities to ensure safe movement.
For more on this, we have Anvit live with us. Anvit, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. What can you tell us?
Coordinated efforts are on, and these Indians are also in touch with the government officials, and efforts are being made to bring them back, those who want to come back. And in this effort, Indigo will be operating 10 special relief operation flights, and from Jeddah to India on March 3rd. And many of these Indians are expected to come on board this flight. In fact, these will be relief flight. However, yesterday a flight from Jeddah came to India, from Abu Dhabi came to India, which was a scheduled flight. Scheduled flights are also now operating, and gradually airports like Jeddah and Abu Dhabi are, in phase manner, they are becoming operational. So which is a good news, and also that, Indigo will be planning, Indigo has planned 10 special relief flights. Yesterday, Ministry of Civil Aviation came out with this statement. So they made the announcement that the relief flights will be operated, and more airlines are also being roped in for the same. At the same time, however, Air India has extended its suspension of flights from the region for March 3rd, and Etihad has also extended till March 4th afternoon. Indigo has also cancelled certain flights, so cancellations are still on because the tension in the region is only escalating. But at the same time, Ministry is keeping a close eye. Ministry of Civil Aviation and Broadcast are keeping a close eye and keeping continuous touch with Indians who are stranded in these regions.
All right, Andrew, thank you so much for that. Let's just listen into some of the reactions before we get you more updates on this.
एयर स्पेस बड़ा बिजी है, वहाँ पे इंटरसेप्ट तो हो रही है बराबर, मिसाइल गिरी कुछ भी नहीं है, जितने भी गिरे हैं वो मलबे ही गिरे हैं, उसी कारण इंजरी हुई है. बाकी यूएस का आई थिंक एयर डिफेंस सिस्टम में तो बड़ा सेफ है वहाँ पे माहौल, बट हाँ वो थोड़े बहुत मलबे गिरने से ज़रूर मर रहे हैं, बट हाँ आप देख सकते हो, फील कर सकते हो वहाँ पे इंटरसेप्ट हो रहे हैं कॉन्स्टेंटली.
It is okay. We could see the missiles and all from our house, and but it was okay. The government was cooperative. They were intercepting everything. There were being alerts sent. So overall, it is a little bit scary, but then we were safe.
The government of India attaches very high importance to the safety, security and well-being of the Indian nationals across the region and in UAE. I would like to tell you that the Indian embassy in UAE and the Indian consulate in Dubai, we are working round the clock 24/7 to ensure that we are available to all members of community. We are running helplines 24/7 and emails, which are details below in the screen.
Vice President Vance has just weighed in on what he'd like to see when the war is over, but does not necessarily expect. Take a look.
In a perfect world, yeah, we would love it if somebody came to power in Iran who was willing to work with the United States, who was willing to show some respect to the United States, and again, most importantly, made that long-term commitment that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. But ultimately, Jesse, whatever happens with the regime in one form or another, it's incidental to the president's primary objective here, which is to make sure the Iranian terrorist regime does not build a nuclear bomb.
As the Vice President tonight at Fox News. Joining us now is host of CNN's GPS, Fareed Zakaria, and New York Times foreign affairs opinion columnist Thomas Friedman, author of the best-selling book among many, From Beirut to Jerusalem. Fareed, did you ever think you would see a war like this with Iran?
Well, it was always possible that the United States would go to war with Iran. But what's strange about this one is the rationale seem odd and constantly shifting. Even in that clip you played, Anderson, first they say, well, we're happy to work with somebody who'd be willing to work with us. Then they say this is a terrorist regime and we must make sure they never get nuclear weapons. We just want to hear them say that. Well, the president said that in the State of the Union. The Ayatollah Khamenei, before he died, had issued a fatwa against nuclear weapons. It's in the first paragraph of the Iran nuclear deal that Obama signed. So what exactly is the goal? You do get the feeling, Anderson, that this is a war that has been entered into with a kind of bomb and hope strategy. That is, bomb them to smithereens, hope that the regime crumbles. Now that it doesn't seem to be at least crumbling before our eyes, the president and the vice president have begun backpedaling and saying, oh, maybe we can deal with these guys. Maybe we can find somebody who we can deal with. And President Trump said Venezuela is the perfect scenario. Remember, in Venezuela, there was no regime change. They just essentially got rid of one person. What happened to the announcement when the president called on the Iranian people to overthrow their government?
You're not saying...
Statement that's been issued by the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. The INB Ministry has indicated that civil aviation authorities are closely monitoring the evolving airspace situation across parts of the Middle East, officials say special arrangements are underway to assist stranded passengers, while airlines are deploying extra capacity and coordinating with foreign authorities to ensure safe movement.
For more on this, we have Anvit live with us. Anvit, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. What can you tell us?
See, coordinated efforts are on, and these Indians are also in touch with the government officials, and efforts are being made to bring them back, those who want to come back. And in this effort, Indigo will be operating 10 special relief operation flights, and from Jeddah to India on March 3rd. And many of these Indians are expected to come on board this flight. In fact, these will be relief flight. However, yesterday a flight from Jeddah came to India, from Abu Dhabi came to India, which was a scheduled flight. Scheduled flights are also now operating, and gradually airports like Jeddah and Abu Dhabi are, in phase manner, they are becoming operational. So, which is a good news, and also that Indigo will be planning. Indigo has planned 10 special relief flights. Yesterday, Ministry of Civil Aviation came out with this statement. So they made the announcement that the relief flights will be operated, and more airlines are also being roped in for the same. At the same time, however, Air India has extended its suspension of flights from the region for March 3rd, and Etihad has also extended till March 4th afternoon. Indigo has also cancelled certain flights, so cancellations are still on because the tension in the region is only escalating. But at the same time, Ministry is keeping a close eye. Ministry of Civil Aviation and Broadcast are keeping a close eye and keeping continuous touch with Indians who are stranded in these regions.
All right, Anvit, thank you so much for that. Let's just listen into some of the reactions before we get you more updates on this.
अंतिम तिथि 15 मार्च 2026 है। 15 मार्च 2026 तक कुल देय एडवांस टैक्स का 100% भुगतान अनिवार्य है। समय पर भुगतान करें, देश के विकास में योगदान दें। प्रत्येक आयकरदाता एक राष्ट्र निर्माता।
Air India Premium Economy boarding now.
I don't walk, I cruise. I don't sit, I lounge. I feel fresh. Hot meals bring a smile. I've found my place in the sky.
Nice, yeah?
Hey, Mahi, suggest a cool bank जो environmentally conscious हो.
SBI, coolest है.
Really?
SBI ने लाखों पेड़ लगाए, वेस्ट मैनेजमेंट प्रोजेक्ट्स को फंड किया, EV लोन्स पे कंसेशंस दी और रेन्यूएबल एनर्जी को मैक्स सपोर्ट किया.
How? That's cool.
SBI, the banker to every Indian. Truly.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks a lot for staying with us. You're watching our rolling and continuous coverage on the West Asia war. Exactly what are all of the countries embroiled saying? We'll get you that and more in just a bit. I'm Shivani Gupta. Joining me also is my colleague Aman Sharma. Together, we'll also be joined with guests on the show, experts, getting you all the viewpoints that you need to know. First up, let's begin with a quick check of the headlines. West Asia war enters its fourth day as Iran continues widespread missile and drone strikes across the Gulf cities and US-Israeli targets. Israel and US carry out airstrikes on Iran. High-resolution satellite images show clear damage at Saudi Arabia's Ras Tanura oil refinery after Iranian one-way attack drone struck, triggering fires and a precautionary shutdown. An Iraqi resistance group claims responsibility for a drone attack on a hotel housing US troops in Erbil, marking a fresh escalation and raising concerns over American force security. US Central Command says American forces have destroyed all 11 Iranian naval vessels in the Gulf of Oman as part of the strikes, reducing Tehran's fleet to zero. 2 Iranian drones struck the US Embassy in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, sparking a small fire and minor damage. No major casualties reported. Donald Trump declines to rule out deploying US ground troops to Iran, saying military options remain open as regional tensions escalate. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the war with Iran will be quick and decisive, not an endless conflict, asserting joint US-Israel strikes aim for swift, overwhelming military success. Iran's foreign minister Araghchi says Marco Rubio admitted the US entered a war of choice for Israel, denying any Iranian threat, asks Americans to reclaim their country. And Israel hacked Tehran's traffic camera network using AI and surveillance data to track Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei and senior leaders, mapping guards' routines and coordinating with the CIA for targeted intelligence. So the conflict in West Asia has spiraled into a perilous new phase, with both Iran and the US-Israel coalition intensifying strikes and making dramatic claims of major attacks across land and sea. Tehran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps asserts it has hit UL naval bases and assets, including a base in Kuwait and ammunition vessels in the Indian Ocean, while warning of further blows in its campaign dubbed Operation True Promise 4. In a major escalation, the US embassy in Riyadh was struck by 2 drones, Saudi authorities confirmed, causing limited fire and minor structural damage. Oil infrastructure has also been caught in the firing line, with drones triggering fires at the Ras Tanura refinery and tanker traffic through the Strait of Hormuz all but halted, threatening global energy markets. Meanwhile, US and Israel forces maintain they are conducting defensive and precision operations against Iranian targets after the initial strikes that ignited the war.
There's never been a president like Donald J. Trump. His resoluteness, his decisiveness, his clarity of thinking, the way he gets right to the crux of things. It cuts through all the fluff, cuts through the chase, gets down to the main point, and he gets down to the main action that needs to be taken. And I think for Israel, and I think for the countries of the free world, let me tell you, I think for the world, we're very lucky to have him as the leader of the free world, and in fact, the leader of the world. He's brought America back to being the leader of the world.
They're suffering a tremendous amount of damage. Honestly, again, I'm not going to give away the details of our tactical efforts, but the hardest hits are yet to come from the U.S. military. The next phase will be even more punishing on Iran than it is right now. Someone was screaming, how long will it take? I don't know how long it'll take. We have objectives. We will do this as long as it takes to achieve those objectives, and we will achieve those objectives.
We have a lot of capacity here. I think there's a lot of chatter about what our objectives is, what our goal is. I mean, I think the president's been extremely clear about our objectives, and it's that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. But there's also been a lot of conversation about what are our capabilities. And look, I know this stuff. Obviously, I'm not going to reveal classified information here on air, but the President of the United States knows what we're able to do. He knows that we have much greater capacity to inflict damage on the Iranian nuclear program, but also on various missiles that threaten our troops. As you've seen, they've been launching those at our troops for much of the past 3 days. So I think the president has made it very clear that the United States has a lot of optionality here. And, you know, we could go for a little bit longer. We could go for a lot longer. But I think the president just wants to make it clear to the Iranians and to the world that he is not going to rest until he accomplishes that all-important objective of ensuring that Iran can't have a nuclear weapon, not just for the next few years, not just because we obliterated Fordow or some other enrichment facility, but because the Iranians themselves commit long-term to not building a nuclear weapon.
Let's get you some of the defining images that we've been tracking as far as these tensions are concerned. More and more action from all sides. This is a video of the US forces destroying an Iranian offensive missile center. So you can see this as, of course, visuals or the footages that have been released, of course, by the US as well. This is released by the US Central Command. These are, of course, professional military images that have been released, that do get released from both sides. This is one where they're destroying Iran's offensive missiles capability. Let's also go across to this US embassy visuals in Riyadh, attacked by drones from the Iranian side. And, you know, Aman, this has become the second US embassy to face such a big attack after the one in Karachi in Pakistan. But this is, of course, a drone attack and not really a citizen-mounted, mob-mounted attack.
And this is what is getting really escalatory in the region, because now our US embassies are getting attacked by Iran's rockets, Iran's missiles. We've seen the US also issuing an advisory and shutting down most most of its embassies in the Middle East, because they are also telling the US staff to leave the Gulf on the first available commercial flight. So clearly, with US embassies under attack and US personnel being killed or injured in these attacks, the US is also going to increase its attacks on Iran, and that is why we are seeing that US is also trying to cripple Iran's capability to launch these attacks on its embassies. And that is why we are seeing that, big time attacks on the US embassies are going to only escalate this war. US embassies also, there is a lot of chatter now, Shivani, that did US also, get its math right? Did it not factor in that its embassies will be attacked? Why did it not fly out its people early? Why is it telling now it's the US citizens in these countries to take the first commercial flight? There seems to be a lot of confusion also in the US top brass, what they're really telling their people in the Middle East. These visuals that we are showing on the screen here, showing that even the US embassy in Riyadh being bombed like this by Iran. What did US not factor this in?
No, there weren't any personnel in the consulate at this time, but they're certainly there in these countries, as you're mentioning, while these counterattacks are being mounted by Iran. So they're, of course, going to be a target. There has been at least one concerted effort by a militia to attack a hotel where the US security forces were staying. This is a visual of a rocket flying over the skies in Dubai. Remember, Dubai has become the picture of those cities in the West, in the West Asian Gulf, prosperous, swanky, and all of that, high net worth individuals living there. But these are, the uncertain times that those in Dubai, cities like Abu Dhabi, etc., are facing. Strikes on Mazandaran district in western Tehran. This is, of course, as part of action that Israel and America are mounting. There has been very, very large-scale bombing that has taken place in Tehran. The Israeli government believes that in Tehran, the IRGC is completely wiped out. They don't have any facilities left anymore. And now possibly that action is going to be replicated across the rest of Iran as well. Some of those sites have already been bombed. Israel intercepting a barrage of Iranian missiles. These are those visuals that we've captured. Of course, this is something that Israel is very good at. They know exactly how to do this, Aman.
Well, absolutely. And Israel has been demonstrating that from time to time. But in this particular conflict, when Iran, I think, is also not a step behind. Iran has been launching these strikes. It has exposed, in fact, I would say, the leaks in the air defenses in many leading Gulf countries as well as Israel. We've seen strikes in Jerusalem as well. And though Israel has been able to counter many of these projectiles, but even if a couple of them make land, the damage that they're causing is immense. And of course, that is not really looking good in this current conflict.
So this visual shows there is a missile plus a lot of these crossfire to intercept those missiles. So you fire a barrage to actually intercept, and at least one of them then catches them. But even if the debris falls on ground, it can cause damage and even loss of life. More visuals, explosion and anti-rocket missiles over Lebanon, which has been dragged into this conflict as well. Remember, Lebanon is where the Hezbollah operates from, and this is going to be an issue as far as Israel is concerned. They've already announced that they're going to go all out for Hezbollah and its proxy, for Iran and its proxy. So that includes Hezbollah in Lebanon. But this is a very major city area, as you can see from the skyline. And there are missiles over Lebanon. These are anti-rocket missiles that are being fired because Israel has promised that they will be mounting an attack here. We're getting some breaking updates now coming in. A stunning revelation from US envoy Steve Witkoff about what he describes as a brazen admission by Iranian negotiators during high-level talks. Witkoff says Iran openly acknowledged stockpiling enough highly enriched uranium to potentially produce multiple nuclear weapons, and according to him, they weren't apologetic about it. Now, this is a big update that's coming in, but remember, the voices from Iran and even the Omanis who've been negotiating between the two have been quite different. My colleague Akansha is joining us with more on this. Akansha, how do we read into this statement?
Right. Remember, this was not the first, but in fact, multiple rounds of peace talks that were going on. In fact, last year in June and this year, again, we've seen how at the behest of the Omanian officials, they were revived in Geneva. And so this detail that Steve Witkoff has in fact shared is very crucial because remember, he's going on to say that they were sitting over enriched uranium, which was worth producing 11 nuclear bombs, 460 kilos kilograms of enriched uranium. This is the detail that has been shared by Steve Witkoff, who, remember, was fronting those peace negotiation talks along with Donald Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner in Geneva. And he's saying that these were details which we had not put out earlier, but we are sharing them now only for you to understand that this was the beginning of their negotiating stance. And he's gone on to say that they were absolutely unabashed about it. They were completely shameless about holding on to this kind of volume of enriched uranium, which, according to the United States and according to the international community, is very much in violation of the international norms, as had already been shared by IAEA. But the big explosive information that's been shared is that Iran indeed, by their own admission, was sitting over enriched uranium worth 11 nuclear bombs. Shivani.
Well, the Americans have indicated this was the point where they absolutely had to mount the attack. Otherwise, Iran could have achieved that critical phase from where Americans or Israelis could have not been able to intervene anymore. So that's the justification Americans have given, of course, as far as Iran's nuclear program or even ballistic missile program is concerned. We've got some more updates coming in. Updates coming in. Tehran's historic Golestan Palace, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, has sustained major damage after US-Israeli strikes on Iran. UNESCO has expressed concern now over the protection of heritage sites across the Middle East amidst this escalating war. So this is going to be a major concern. Aman, there are, of course, always collateral damage, not just in terms of civilians, but also in terms of heritage sites like these.
Well, absolutely. And UNESCO is, there are so many heritage sites, in fact, in the Middle East, which are all UNESCO protected. So clearly, the UNESCO is saying that these heritage sites should be protected. But, in a conflict like this, when missiles are raining and, there is no real way to protect them. Even civilian infrastructure is not getting protected in many ways. You had the Dubai airport being hit. You had the Abu Dhabi airport being hit. You are getting US embassies also hit. But in such a scenario, it's a task cut out for, I think, the Gulf countries also to save their heritage sites. But this particular attack which has come and which has left this palace damaged, I think a very big issue of concern as well.
Let's go across to my colleague Crispine joining us with more on this. Crispine, can you give us a little bit more idea of what exactly has happened at this site?
Yeah, I'm going to try and browse through some of the details that have come in on social media, some of the news outlets also sharing updates. This is Al Jazeera, speaks of how Tehran's historic Golestan Palace, it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, has sustained major damage after US-Israeli strikes on Iran. UNESCO has expressed concerns over the protection, it says, of heritage sites across Middle East amid the escalating war. And I'm going to quickly show you these visuals as well. Look at that. You can clearly see how the doors, the windows, all of that could feel the impact. This is possibly a strike that's taken place in this area. So not directly hit by an Israeli strike. Perhaps there was a strike that took place in the nearby area and the impact can be felt here. You can see broken glasses, broken doors, the mirror work. And that's what Iran officials are saying, right? Iranian officials at the moment, Shivani Aman, are saying that this is an attack on Iran's national and cultural identity as well. So UNESCO expressing concerns too. And what we know so far is that this is, protection of heritage sites being sought. Now, if I just go into more details on what this says about Golestan Palace on the UNESCO World Heritage Convention official website, it speaks of this palace as a masterpiece of the Qajar era, embodying the successful integration of earlier Persian crafts and architecture with Western influences. This is why a lot of Iranian officials at the moment irked at the damage this palace has suffered, calling it an attack on Iran's cultural identity. It's a walled palace, one of the oldest groups of buildings in Tehran, and became the seat of the government of Qajar family, which came into power in 1779. That's a little bit of a historical context to this heritage site as well.
Yes, thanks a lot for that. More updates now coming in, and this is with respect to the women of Iran. Remember, they are a big factor, and everybody is looking out at their reaction and responses, not just those who are in Iran, but even those who are outside of Iran currently, and most of them were celebrating after Khamenei's death. Now, Iran's women's national football team has refused to sing their national anthem during the AFC Women's Asian Cup opener against South Korea. this is a gesture that is being interpreted as a protest against the regime. Remember, it is the women of Iran that have been the front runners as far as protesting against the regime and its anti-women practices are concerned. My colleague Aman is also joining us with more on this.
Well, Shivani, here is the latest that the Iranian women football national team, the women's team, refused to sing the Islamic regime's anthem. I have Greha with me explaining more. Greha, what has happened here?
Aman, so I was just looking at these feeds on social media, and this is what is going viral. Just let me know if there is more glare on the screen. I'll just get the audio up on this. And there you see the Iranian players. This is the Asia Cup opener against South Korea. It took place on the 2nd of March. And this is a gesture by the Iranian women's team that has been widely interpreted as protest against the regime amidst this regional conflict that is ongoing. And this is the video footage that is something that we've managed to access here. And this is what is happening. The national anthem is playing, but they are refusing to sing to it. All of them with the headscarf, but they are in fact showing this posture of defiance, which is pretty much aligning with the pattern of all of the Iranian athletes and their subtle rebellion. And this is pretty much aligned with exactly that, and how they have in fact refused to sing the anthem. All of this is happening since 2022. Remember, Aman, ever since the Mahsa Amini protests were ongoing. And this one, which is the very latest one, in fact highlights that they welcome a regime change. They welcome the Islamic revolution going away. There is a major section of the Iranians that in fact talk about it, and the athletes pretty much showing similar sentiments, where all of them refusing to sing to the national anthem. And this is a key development that we are learning of that's just happened on the 2nd of March.
And this is something also that, the Donald Trump has cited when he said that why they are attacking Iran is because the Islamist regime there is subjugating women, and they are killing the protesters who have been out on the streets. And this particular incident where the Iranian women football team is refusing to sing the anthem of the Islamic Republic is another testament to see that maybe local Iranians, especially Iranian women, are welcoming this change which is happening and the regime change that the US says it wants to achieve in Iran. Back to you, Shivani.
Yes, and this is what the Americans and the Israelis are banking on. After a tipping point is achieved, will the people take over and effect a more deep-rooted, grounded regime change? Because right now, it's just the top layer being eliminated in strikes, but that hasn't meant that Iran has changed. Rajiv Dogra, former diplomat, Major General Sanjay Meston, defense expert, joining us. Charles Kupchan is an international affairs expert and senior fellow at CFR, all with us. Rajiv Dogra, I begin with you. There's been some mixed signaling from the Americans since late last evening, what Pete Hegseth said, then what Donald Trump said, then what Rubio said. And everybody's wondering, are they a little confused about the end goals of this strike? Because initially they said it is regime change, then they said not, but they're hoping for one. How do they achieve one? Nobody's quite saying. So is there a little bit of confusion?
Good morning, Shivani. Good morning, Aman, and to my fellow panelists and your viewers. It's an intense morning, and a morning where war is supplemented by information war. Steve Witkoff's statement is full of holes. He says in the first meeting with the Iranians, or indirect meeting with the Iranians, they were boasting about their nuclear stockpile. Now, the entire world knows that Iranians had enriched uranium to 60%. And in fact, the Omani foreign minister, the day before American and Israel strike on Iran, he had said on American television that Iranians were willing to agree to all American demands so that the uranium, even that which was enriched to 60, would be reduced to non-objectionable levels. So, giving wrong information to the world can only surprise to an extent, but then people are exposed. So, Americans are now desperate to convince their own people by propaganda, but propaganda does not replace reality. The fact is that Americans have gone into the war with their eyes closed, a war which is costly for Americans, costly for countries in Gulf, costly of course for Iran and Israel.
Major General, I want to understand from you, how do you look at these statements where they're actually not denying outrightly that there would be boots on ground? Because everybody has talked about, all military experts that we've been talking to, like yourself, from the very beginning, that, you know, airstrikes have never achieved regime changes, right? You have to have boots on ground. And the American president is actually not denying this, which is in itself a big statement.
Yeah, absolutely right, Shivani. I personally feel that what perhaps the intent could be, that for the near future, I doubt any boots on ground will be there. You know, sometimes boots on ground also does not meet only soldiers, it means assets, the CIA asset or the Mossad asset. Sometimes they are also commonly referred to as boots on ground. So they are, as it is there, and they have got lot of hold in the IRGC and the entire network, and we have seen how the top leadership of Supreme Leader and all were eliminated. But now coming on to at what stage the boots on ground can be there. See, the intent of boots on ground at this juncture is not required because the Supreme Leader and the 40 top leadership has already been eliminated. So what will the boots on ground achieve? Boots on ground can only come at a much later stage, and that can only come once the American and the Israel coalition is effective in neutralizing to quite a marginalizing the IRGC to quite an extent that they become ineffective, and they can only become ineffective once, you know, their missiles and of course the drone capabilities is made quite incapable, or the quantity of launching is reduced. Right now they are launching in huge numbers, the Shahid drones, etc. But once the numbers launched are reduced significantly, and that time when they start feeling that the people of Iran, you just saw the national anthem where people were showing the resentment. So there are a large number of people in Iran who are, you know, those quiet people who are not making any noise right now. The January protest revealed to some extent I would say the hatred towards the regime. So now what may happen is, once the local population is convinced that now the threat has been eliminated and the IRGC that danda is over, you know, that rod is over, then perhaps the people could start coming out, and that time the troops can be sent, American troops can be sent in
to manage
just few quantities, just to, you know, come as liberators. So they will not get
to facilitate the changeover.
Yeah, they will not get involved in any warfare or anything. They just come, you know, we have given you the freedom, and which president announced that be prepared for your freedom. But this, even if these people come, they are not going to be effective in any regime change. That would be dependent on the people of Iranian and how they do it, whether it is the present administration which continues in some form or some new administration comes up. That's a matter of
we'll wait and see. So far, of course, the so-called regime is not giving in, and that was also possibly expected. I'm sure Israel and US saw that coming. Speaking of that resistance, let's also listen in to take a look at this breaking updates that's coming in. US has now intercepted an Iranian drone which was targeting American base in northern Iraq. So as we've been telling you, Iran has been opening up a lot of fronts. So even Iraq, places like Kuwait, they've not been spared. There's been some sort of an attack in Cyprus as well, drawing in the British as well, who are resistant to joining this conflict. But these are visuals of the interception that is being done as an Iranian drone is targeting the base. But look at the amount of firepower you have to employ even to intercept a drone, which is why even drone interception or missile interception is a very costly affair, and there will be costs mounting on all sides. Have the US, the Israelis factored all of this in along with the damage to their assets? These are all naval and other bases that are being attacked around the Gulf. And have they factored in, of course, the loss of life? Already 4 US soldiers have been martyred as far as this operation is concerned. I also want to go across to Charles joining us. Charles Kupchan is an international affairs expert. How do you read into all of the American statements that we've heard over the last 8 to 10 hours?
Well, I think the statements coming out from the Trump administration make it clear that they don't have a clear sense of an end game. I think the military part of this campaign is in some ways the easy part. They know what they're doing. They're going after leadership. They're going after the ballistic missiles. They're going after command and control. And right now, in some ways, we're in the most intense part of the campaign when the Iranians still have the ability to retaliate. They have chosen to retaliate against allies of the United States in the Gulf, in part because they think they can convince the Saudis, the Omanis, the Kuwaitis, the Emiratis to say to the United States, please stop. This is causing disruption to the oil flow. This is causing disruption to our ability to function economically. But in some ways, I think the reaction is going to be the opposite. You will see these countries turn against Iran and not put pressure on the United States to stop the conflict. And the question is, how long can the Iranians keep this up? How quickly can Israel and the United States eliminate the ballistic missiles? But then comes the hard part, and that is what happens the day after. Will the regime change its tune and the next group that leads it agree to work with the United States? Will the United States continue to bomb the regime until it falls and there is a natural uprising? As one of your guests was just saying, when you don't have ground troops to fight alongside the air power, it's very hard to topple a regime. So I don't think the Trump administration knows what the end game is. I do think, judging by what they did in Venezuela, what they seem to be doing in Cuba, the idea is to degrade the regime and end up with some remaining group of leaders that's willing to work with the United States, because pulling down that regime, toppling it, is too risky, as the United States found out in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Libya. But right now, I would say nobody knows where this conflict is going. Nobody knows how or when it will end.
Well, clearly, and Shivani, it seemed that the US was looking at a very short war. They eliminated the supreme leader. They thought the first message that Donald Trump put out on social media was imploring the people of Iran to look for a new regime, look forward to their getting back their democracy. But clearly, the plan doesn't seem to have gone the way it should have. Isn't Mr. Dogra? Do you think US has also, in a way, underestimated Iran in a big way? What we have seen happening in the last 2 days?
Grossly underestimated. In fact, I'll repeat and endorse what Charles said, that US did not know what the end game would be. I would only supplement it by saying that US also did not know why the starting game should have been the way it has started. The other thing, I'll differ slightly with Charles on this, is that the people of Iran are not against the regime presently in numbers sufficient to bring about a change. In fact, my latest book is titled Autocrats, and there I have studied regime changes all over the history from the beginning of civilization, and my conclusion was that unless there's a mass of 20% of the population, there cannot be a regime change. And mostly autocrats last a long time. In this case, autocrat is not a single person, it's a regime, and that is why after Khamenei, the transition has been smooth, and it will keep on being smooth even if they kill Americans and Israelis kill the current layer of the top leadership, because there is a succession plan already. The second thing, and the most important thing as far as Iranian people are concerned, just as Charles said that Americans have made a mess of Iraq, Afghanistan and so on, Iranian people realize that okay, the present regime may be autocratic, but what about the mess if that is replaced by American-sponsored leadership? So they are afraid that that could be much worse for them and for generations to come if the present order is replaced by disorder. So, no, go ahead.
Yes, so now I just wanted to add an update that of course there are now 6 service members who have been killed. 6 service US military members, and General Heston, this is also going to mount a pressure, right? The more casualties you have on your side, again Donald Trump has indicated that he's prepared for it.
Yeah, very true, Shivani. See, let's be very clear. American public is against body bags coming in large numbers to their homeland. There is no doubt. And therefore, for President Trump and his forces which are operating For them, the priority is to terminate this war at the earliest. The more it gets delayed, apparently the more number of casualties the United States troops will suffer on ground, and especially whether it is Erbil in Iraq. You have seen some kind of bombing there. In a hotel in Dubai, probably some of the US troops were lost there. So all this will create problems for the United States. So therefore, as brought out by the earlier guest, I think the priority of the US and Israeli alliance right now would be to target and try to, neutralize maximum number of these launchers, the drone launchers, the missile launchers, and of course the missiles itself. Because if they can do that, and see, we also must remember that large number of drones and missiles have already been fired and utilized by the Iranians, firing all over, whether it is on the GCC, whether it is on so many places they have fired, Israel, etc. So that is also declining. How much capability they have now to continue production, that is questionable. And the launchers are the most critical thing. The launchers also today, the satellite monitoring of the United States is too good. They are the best in satellites.
Right.
So they are giving real-time information, and that is how you see so many photographs and images have been shown where the launchers are being targeted. So if in the next 24 to 48 hours they are successfully eliminating all these launchers and missile sites, it definitely will have an outcome of the battle, and therefore this 24 to 48 hours is very, very critical. And since America is already stating that, we are going to up the ante, we are going to have, and there are some reports, that about 12 to 15 refuelers have already taken off for mid-air refueling. That means the air campaign is going to go on a massive onslaught, because satellites are going to give real-time information, and targeting would be done by
Israel's Benjamin Netanyahu has also said that actually the next wave is going to be much, much more severe than what the first wave was. My colleague Aman has some more updates.
And we have some big breaking news now coming in that India has issued a NOTAM. This is creating panic in Pakistan. Pakistan, which is already engaged on the Afghanistan-Iran borders, the Arabian Sea, and has been monitoring the same amid the Middle East crisis. Now Pakistan is pushing its forces to monitor an Indian exercise from March 5th to March 12th. Pakistan's military and aerial capabilities will be stretched because of the Indian exercise. Beyond its capacity, Pakistan could be stretched. That is what the top security sources are saying, that India has issued a notification reserving airspace for an Indian Air Force exercise near the southern section of its border with Pakistan from March 5 to 12. I'd like to go to one of my foreign ministry colleague, Akanksha Swaroop, who has the latest on this. And this Indian exercise, in fact, which was scheduled earlier, this information brought to us by our internal security editor, Manoj Gupta. But this is all bound to create more panic in Pakistan, because India is also upping its ante with this exercise. Akanksha, latest for you.
Absolutely. And Aman, as we are all aware, there's a lot of anger which is palpable within Pakistan itself, within the Shia community, in fact, even the Sunnis. And look at the way their consulates have been attacked just yesterday, especially in Karachi, Lahore, Islamabad as well. But I want to quickly show our viewers that this is what the NOTAM looks like. India is now going to be reserving its airspace towards its western borders, in fact, adjoining Pakistan from Jaisalmer, Jodhpur. It looks like the state of Rajasthan, where India is now, in fact, reserving airspace for an exercise on the southern section of its borders with Pakistan from 5th up until 12th of March. Now, as Aman also was highlighting, and perhaps Aman can also weigh in on these inputs that have been shared by Manoj, that there's a lot of unrest, and Pakistan's already on tenterhooks, given that there's much tension brewing on their borders with Afghanistan. You're looking at heightened military alertness in Arabian Sea as well, and the Iranian border too.
Absolutely. That is what Indian security sources are telling Manoj Gupta, our internal security editor, group editor, that Pakistan resources are going to get stretched now, because not only are they handling a situation with Afghanistan, they're also monitoring the Middle East, what is happening there. And now with this latest NOTAM issued by India for these exercises, a week-long exercise on its border with Pakistan, India is going to do it. Pakistan is going to have a keep a watch here as well at what India is up to. So clearly...
The other question that arises is, what is India preparing for as well, Aman? That's a very key critical question. Given that we are seeing most of the bombardment that's happening right now is through the use of drones, through the use of missiles. Is India also keeping its own air preparedness ready?
Well, yeah, that would be a bit speculative to say, Akanksha, that India is also, of course, contingency measures are always in place. And I believe this exercise was being prepared since earlier. But clearly the timing of it right now was obviously going to raise some eyebrows, you know, and Pakistan may feel what India is really up to. Back to you, Shivani, in the studio.
All right. Thank you so much. We'll keep coming back to you for more. Also take a look at this CNN chief correspondent Clarissa Ward report where she witnessed the Iranian drones flying overhead towards Iraq. Take a look.
Team capturing a dramatic moment at the Iran-Iraq border earlier today. Let me show you what they just saw.
Hoping you can see that now. An Iranian drone literally just flew directly over our heads from Iran into Iraq.
And Clarissa is with me now, our chief international correspondent, as I said, in Erbil. And Clarissa, what are you learning about this strike on a base?
That's right, Aaron. There have been a number of attacks across Iraq, in particular here in the Kurdish part of Iraq tonight. We're hearing that multiple drones struck the Harir Air Base. That is about 30 miles outside of Erbil. Funnily enough, we actually drove past it earlier today. Unclear whether there are any Americans at this base, but I can tell you that around the same time as this was going on, we were also hearing a lot of activity at the Erbil Airport, which is just in that direction behind me. That's where we saw last night flames after a drone hit an ammo dump. We were hearing a lot of military helicopters in the skies for quite some time. Unclear if that was related, but certainly it was a significant uptick in the kind of activity that we have seen. We are also hearing reports of a drone strike on Hormor gas field. This has come under attack before. It's significant because A, like much of Kurdistan, it does not have air defenses. The air base does, and anywhere where U.S. troops are present, for the most part, does. But this airfield, this gas field, does not. And it's where 80% of the electricity that powers Iraqi Kurdistan is generated. So that also very significant. And also to the south, in federal Iraq, we are hearing reports of protesters once again trying to break into the fortified green zone compound where the U.S. embassy is. There were reports of flashbangs and smoke, and the protesters were dispersed. Also, reports of protesters harassing staff at a Kentucky Fried Chicken in Baghdad, and generally just a sense that things are escalating, tensions are rising, and a huge amount of anxiety about where this is all going, Aaron.
A statement that's been issued by the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. The INB Ministry has indicated that civil aviation authorities are closely monitoring the evolving airspace situation across parts of the Middle East. Officials say special arrangements are underway to assist stranded passengers, while airlines are deploying extra capacity and coordinating with foreign authorities to ensure safe movement.
For more on this, we have Anvit live with us. Anvit, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. What can you tell us?
See, coordinated efforts are on, and these Indians are also in touch with the government officials, and efforts are being made to bring them back, those who want to come back. And in this effort, Indigo will be operating 10 special relief operation flights, and from Jeddah to India on March 3rd. And many of these Indians are expected to come on board this flight. In fact, these will be relief flight. However, yesterday a flight from Jeddah came to India, from Abu Dhabi came to India, which was a scheduled flight. Scheduled flights are also now operating, and gradually airports like Jeddah and Abu Dhabi are, in phase manner, they are becoming operational. So which is a good news, and also that Indigo will be planning. Indigo has planned 10 special relief flights. Yesterday, Ministry of Civil Aviation came out with this statement So they made the announcement that relief flights will be operated, and more airlines are also being roped in for the same. At the same time, however, Air India has extended its suspension of flights from the region for March 3rd, and Etihad has also extended till March 4th afternoon. Indigo has also cancelled certain flights, so cancellations are still on because the tension in the region is only escalating. But at the same time, Ministry is keeping a close eye. Ministry of Civil Aviation and Broadcast are keeping a close eye and keeping continuous touch with Indians who are stranded in these regions.
All right, Anvit, thank you so much for that. Let's just listen into some of the reactions before we get you more updates on this.
एयर स्पेस बड़ा बिजी है, वहाँ पे इंटरसेप्ट तो हो रही है बराबर, मिसाइल गिरी कुछ भी नहीं है, जितने भी गिरे हैं वो मलबे ही गिरे हैं, उसी कारण इंजरी हुई है. बाकी यूएस का आई थिंक एयर डिफेंस सिस्टम में तो बड़ा सेफ है वहाँ पे माहौल, बट हाँ वो थोड़े बहुत मलबे गिरने से ज़रूर मर रहे हैं, बट हाँ आप देख सकते हो, फील कर सकते हो वहाँ पे इंटरसेप्ट हो रहे हैं कॉन्स्टेंटली.
It is okay. We could see the missiles and all from our house, and but it was okay. The government was cooperative. They were intercepting everything. There were being alerts sent. So overall, it is a little bit scary, but then we were safe.
The government of India attaches very high importance to the safety, security and well-being of the Indian nationals across the region and in UAE. I would like to tell you that the Indian Embassy in UAE and the Indian Consulate in Dubai, we are working around the clock 24/7 to ensure that we are available to all members of community. We are running helplines 24/7 and emails which are details below in the screen. Please, you can reach out to us through this at any point in time for any concern that you would have. Friends, I would also like to tell you, please do not fall prey to any rumors or unverified information. Always check official handles, in the embassy social media handles, the official media handles, and the handles of the authorities in UAE and different emirates for any information.
A statement that's been issued by the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. The INB Ministry has indicated that civil aviation authorities are closely monitoring the evolving airspace situation across parts of the Middle East. Officials say special arrangements are underway to assist stranded passengers, while airlines are deploying extra capacity and coordinating with foreign authorities to ensure safe movement.
For more on this, we have Anvit live with us. Anvit, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. What can you tell us?
See, coordinated efforts are on, and these Indians are also in touch with the government officials, and efforts are being made to bring them back, those who want to come back. And in this effort, Indigo will be operating 10 special relief operation flights, and from Jeddah to India on March 3rd. And many of these Indians are expected to come on board this flight. In fact, these will be relief flight. However, yesterday a flight from Jeddah came to India, from Abu Dhabi came to India, which was a scheduled flight. Scheduled flights are also now operating, and gradually airports like Jeddah and Abu Dhabi are, in phase manner, they are becoming operational. So, which is a good news, and also that Indigo will be planning. Indigo has planned 10 special relief flights. Yesterday, Ministry of Civil Aviation came out with this statement. So they made the announcement that relief flights will be operated, and more airlines are also being roped in for the same. At the same time, however, Air India has extended its suspension of flights from the region for March 3rd, and Etihad has also extended till March 4th afternoon. Indigo has also cancelled certain flights, so cancellations are still on because the tension in the region is only escalating. But at the same time, Ministry is keeping a close eye. Ministry of Civil Aviation and Broadcast are keeping a close eye and keeping continuous touch with Indians who are stranded in these.
Thanks a lot for staying with us. We're getting some more updates coming in. A drone has been shot down near Erbil Airport now. The Hezbollah says it launched an attack on military base in northern Israel. But it seems the interceptors have already worked. A drone has been shot down now in Erbil itself. Now, this is, of course, the widening of the front for Israel as well. They would have expected some of this from Lebanon, from Iraq. but they're prepared for it. They've already announced yesterday that Hezbollah and its top leadership is now marked for destruction. And one of their stated objectives post-October 7, 2023 has been not just Iran, but also its proxies. And Hezbollah is, of course, one of them. So Hezbollah had said that it had launched an attack on the military bases in northern Israel, but some of those drones have been intercepted near the Erbil airport. We'll wait and see exactly what more comes out of that. But like Major General Sanjay Meston continues to be with us, sir. You know, this is going to be a problem for Israel, do you think, or they're mentally and militarily very equipped to handle this, because there are going to be more fronts opened up? Right now, it's just the Hezbollah. There would be possibly the Houthis who also enter.
Not only Houthis, I think even the Hamas could be probably re-energized.
It depends on how much of the Hamas is now capable of.
Because see, Hamas has not been decimated. They have not been finished. They have been only weakened. The way even Hezbollah was weakened. So probably, and now what has happened after the killing of the supreme leader, all these, elements like Hamas, Houthi, and of course the Iraqi militias and Hezbollah, they have been re-energized. There is no doubt about that. So when they are re-energized, their morale and motivation is high, so they can do small-scale actions. So from Gaza, small detachments can come and take on the Israeli troops, so that is a possibility. Hezbollah is doing what they are doing. They have started launching a large number of missiles and of course drones into the northern territory of Israel. That possibility exists. And of course, the Houthis remain active by blocking the entire Red Sea and of course firing their missiles. I think the one which has been fired in Saudi Arabia oil refinery, probably it was from Houthis. And of course, Houthis can also fire back at Israel. So the threat remains. As on date, is how Israel is being able to handle it. Obviously, they have the advantage that a lot of Patriot and THAAD missiles of the US have been deployed there, including in Jordan. And also the USS Gerald Ford has been deployed, which again gives them air defense protection. And more so, the Israelis today are using even the Israeli, that is the iron beam, which is of course 10 kilometers is what the range is, but it requires 100 kVA power. So that probably is also being used. But at the same time, if there are huge number of swarm drones or large number of cruise missiles, ballistic missile launched, some of them apparently will get through and destroy some of the infrastructure and of course cause casualties in Israel. So how they handle it, of course now depends on two factors. One is of course the effective AD system, but please remember even the AD systems are being rendered ineffective because it is expensive and they are also being utilized. So now therefore the priority is from where they are originating from the Iranian homeland to target these missile launchers, the missile sites. That is what their focus is and this is what they are looking for. How successful they would be, how many numbers they can target in the next 24 to 48 hours depends. But that would be now the US and Israel priority to weaken them in terms of their the missile and the launch capabilities of the drones. So that is what they are looking for. And of course, please, also we must remember the detachments who are using and firing these missiles, drones, they are well spread across the entire territory of Iran. They are